When he left home this morning, he had no idea that this day would be as momentous as it turned out to be. A few minutes later, he realized that he had power over his life, the ability to rip out his own heart. It all started this morning when the main character, Lin, was told at the hospital that nothing would save his life. The doctor recommended that he be referred to hospice given his financial situation. At this time, a heavy downpour broke outside. As if the heavens took pity on the tear-drenched hero who stood before the inevitability of his fate. Condensed into a serious decision, Lin threw away the trash that had accumulated in his jacket all this time at the very moment the sky was spilling its tears, as if saying goodbye to the past. His pathological diagnosis was established: late-stage stomach cancer. Faced with this fact, Lin realized that every minute had become precious and he must accept his fate. The main character decided to call some girl just to talk, but she quickly dismissed his call by announcing that her boyfriend was on his way and hung up. The man, frustrated, longed only for conversation, genuinely eager to share his burden and find understanding in the difficult situation that had engulfed his life. His father became ill and died of an illness around the same age, and now it was his turn. Having never met his birth mother, his childhood was on the shoulders of only his grandmother, who was long gone, leaving him alone for many years. Although he was strong and optimistic, the world was still out of control. Having lost his job, girlfriend and savings, he decided to take his ticket to living in this unpredictable world. But unfortunately, he realized that he was no longer able to change or do anything. Realizing his hopeless situation and the hopelessness of his situation, it was at this moment that he felt an unbearable pain engulf him, as if many needles were piercing his heart, leaving only a feeling of helplessness and despair. After that, a sudden attack of coughing seized him, and blood flowed from his mouth like streams of bitter reality, making him feel that time was running out. Perhaps the doctor tricked him and he didn't have as much time left as they said. Now, instead of quietly fighting the disease at home, he faces the reality of death. May that day come sooner rather than later, freeing him from the pain and suffering he is powerless to fight, allowing him to drift into peace, finding freedom from the burdens of life. At that moment he heard the screams of a girl sounding far away like echoes of a nightmare. A little boy had fallen into the water and she was begging to save his brother. She could not afford to wait long, for if she delayed the boy would simply drown, and yet he had fallen into the deep whirlpool, and it was still raining outside. She stood on the brink of a decision, ready to risk everything for her baby brother, but the dangers seemed too great, her heart beating faster, the baby's cries growing louder, spurring her resolve. All present were sure that the guy could not survive if no one helped him. The sudden danger filled their hearts with anxiety and desire to save human life, but before they knew it, at that moment, someone was determinedly rushing into the water, willing to risk his life to save the boy. It was the protagonist who, to the surprise of everyone, turned out to be a young guy and decided not to stand by but to save the boy by throwing himself into the water without hesitation. Of course, he was eager to save the boy who had fallen into the river, despite the risks and dangers. Focusing only on helping someone in trouble, everyone began to discourage him and insist that he return, realizing it was too risky for him. But his determination and desire to help proved stronger. If the choice was to die, it was better to risk it that way, he thought, for in that case he could not lose, and at least trying to save the boy was worth the risk. With all his might he tried to walk out of this life with pride, knowing that his final act would be an attempt to save another human being. This choice filled his heart with confidence and courage. The girl decided to go after her boyfriend and her brother, so she started running, realizing that time is playing against them and every second is important to save their lives. Everyone present cheered him on, and in that moment he gained determination and was able to fulfill his plan despite all the obstacles and dangers that stood in his way. They stopped supporting him in his stubborn venture, realizing the danger and risks involved in his act, but he remained undeterred, determined to see it through. Lin had already almost reached the guy and was ready to save him, feeling his every muscle tense and his heart beating faster in anticipation of this moment. At that moment, a powerful wave came over him, knocking him down and pulling him into the strong current, forcing him to fight for survival in this merciless natural rush, only hoping to be rescued. Everyone present could see how the guy was able to save the boy as well, forever leaving a mark in their hearts with his selfless act. The lunar hero was certain that the gods had bestowed too little luck upon him, and he prayed for a chance, an opportunity, to take it for once. He only needed to use it once to change the course of events and bring light to the darkness that surrounded him and those around him, bringing hope and faith in miracles. He was glad the boy was alive, and felt deep gratitude for the opportunity to save him. Realizing that this was a moment of true triumph over death, everyone immediately took notice of the situation, but noticed that the current was too strong. Nevertheless, realizing that there was a chance of getting them to shore, Lin, finding a ladder jutting out of the water, instantly grabbed hold of it, skillfully using it as a lifeline for himself and the boy out from under the power of the mighty current. This gave them a chance of escape. He asked the boy to hold onto the ladder and keep quiet, concentrating on survival. He needed to keep his head above water and fight for life. Lifeboats were on their way, bringing with them relief and hope. They had been rescued and there were only a few minutes left to survive before help arrived that would give a full rescue. The protagonist decided not to let the guy go, holding him until other rescuers got him safely to shore. It was his decision and he was willing to stick to it to the end. The next time the guy is in the water, he'll have to pay for his life. The protagonist decides he won't let him go gratuitously, demanding justice. The kid suggested he'd better learn to swim. His parents and sister forbade him to play in the water, but every time he saw water he couldn't resist and wanted to play in it. His name is Chin Zimming, but those close to him call him Puffy. This nickname has stayed with him since childhood and has become part of his personality, giving him a unique affection. When he returned and glanced around and realized that his older brother was not in his usual place, excitement swept over him, leaving him in a state of anxiety and uncertainty. The rescuers were also worried not finding the older brother, which caused additional anxiety and tension among everyone at the scene. Those present could only speculate that the boy's older brother may have been physically exhausted, which probably led to his drowning. Basically, they were right, as the protagonist did begin to sink, victimized by his own risk and desperation, which was the epitome of their fears. And so, the time came when existence became acceptable and some information or knowledge began to be imparted, perhaps resolving the current situation or clarifying circumstances. This beam hit the protagonist directly, lighting up his face and probably bringing with it some important discovery and insight that could change the course of events. He was a wandering spirit from a distant galaxy. When his planet exploded, he escaped from his body and it was only through his soul that he was able to survive. He searched for his home and found it on a blue planet where beings are able to take souls and sustain life. Borrowing the technology to concentrate his soul and choose a suitable body, he finally determined that his soul was temporarily inhabiting his body. It was unknown if his compatriots had already been found on this planet, and to ensure safety, he activated the special ability in his body until he found a more suitable place to live. Now he needs to get back to life and continue his existence, feeling joy and overcoming the challenges that lie ahead in this unpredictable and amazing world. Lin felt a flow of energy right through his body, as if a wave of power was permeating his every cell, filling him with invigorating power and electrical tension. Every cell of his essence has undergone major changes to further his evolution, activating abilities that make an ordinary human. These abilities will improve and develop as he exists in the new world. Let him use them to do what he must. After a million light years of traveling, he is ready to begin hibernation, restoring the life force in his body, not knowing when he will awaken. He has chosen a protagonist he believes in, knowing their destiny is bound together. When the heroes got hold of the girl, he immediately set about rescuing her, despite all the difficulties and dangers, with full determination to protect her and keep her safe. He thought he was hallucinating when he heard that voice that sought to save him, but the sounds turned out to be real, giving hope of escape in the dark, solving the mystery behind this unexpected adventure. She is serious about saving his life, but she doesn't realize that the one she is trying so hard to save is long dead and beyond saving. He couldn't understand why the girl was so insistent on bringing him back to this world. After all, he had long since lost the will to live, and it seemed he would have to disappoint her. But just at the moment when the girl started CPR, the guy suddenly woke up, regaining consciousness and feeling life coming back to him. Everyone was instantly relieved that the boy was alive, their hearts filled with joy and relief to see that the danger had passed and he had returned to them. But immediately the guy cried and began to thank the protagonist for saving his life, expressing deep gratitude for the fact that he was there and managed to help. Some men came up and remarked that, looking at the guy up close, it was no wonder he was so good looking, because you could tell from his appearance that he was exercising. The protagonist looked at himself and was amazed at the changes that had happened to him, feeling that his appearance had undergone an unexpected and impressive transformation, causing him to reflect on his past and future. The guy realized what was happening when he found his clothes had become tight, feeling his body undergo an unusual change, causing surprise and bewilderment. The girl, concerned, asked the guy if he was okay and insisted that he hold on to her, since the ambulance was on its way, expressing concern and willingness to help. The guy doesn't have any pain and it seems like he's not even sick. His body seems stronger than ever. Energy is so high he's ready to run a marathon. This must be a dream. It seems like he still hasn't woken up since yesterday. So here they are. The guy will be the subject of discussion on the news. They head to the hospital to check his condition, being surprised by this strange case. The protagonist couldn't understand what this news meant and why he should waste time on his dreams when he had an interview waiting for him. Anyway, if he screwed up in front of the camera he would wake up. So it was time to get out of here. Their assumption was that the guy was someone who does good deeds but prefers to remain anonymous, not wanting to draw attention to his identity. His own body became so light, it was like walking on clouds, and he realized that this was definitely a a dream, for in real life he wouldn't be able to run like this. Every time he thinks he's going to wake up to realize what's going on, he's actually lying half dead in bed, remaining in a fog between dream and reality. It's like the moment of realization when you dream of seeing a chocolate world in your hands as a child, and upon awakening you feel a deep emptiness, wishing that dream would never end. Under the forceful impact from the car, Lin soared a few meters up and did a flip. His body seemed to somersault in the air, sudden and unexpected. The driver was surprised that the man was okay after the collision. Upon closer inspection he noticed that even his shoes were still on despite the force of the impact. Lin couldn't tell if he had actually crashed. After all, it was only a scratch, and besides, it was starting to heal quickly, causing him to have mixed feelings of surprise and bewilderment. What's more important is why he didn't wake up. Before, when he just stumbled, he always woke up. Now the situation seems different. Only one conclusion remains: it wasn't a dream. Assuming that he was dead, Lin saw this as a boon, for he found himself in a world of bliss after death, where he was free from all sickness and disease, enjoying freedom and tranquility. Lin is sure this is the world after death. He feels invigorated, runs home with ease without even feeling out of breath. And this world is exactly the same as when he was alive. It is exactly the same village, with the same broken down house on the outskirts, with no visible change, as if time had stopped at the moment of his death. Everything is also moldy, doors are broken, and everything also looks poor. Even though the past is not coming back and time continues on its way, everyone is also frustrated and hungry, Jerry, and no one can afford a similar fate as everyone goes their own way, overcoming their own challenges. And he also remained completely alone, completely isolated from the world around him, as if his existence took place in a parallel reality where there was no room for anyone else. But if this really is the afterlife, his grandmother must be here, and then he will no longer be alone, for this is the world where souls are reunited after death. The moment the woman noticed the guy who seemed crazy was a point of sudden realization, and her attention was drawn to his strange behavior, possibly disturbing. It was Aunt Lo and Aunt Ko, and the lad wondered if they had noticed his grandmother, for her presence might explain the strange occurrence around them. But Aunt Ko claimed that his grandmother had died many years ago, which greatly confused the lad, for he felt that her presence was as if confirming her existence in this world. They were sure that the protagonist was hiding his suffering. After all, he had been living alone for years, without friends. They had heard that a few months ago he had been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and it seemed to be true. Lin tried to understand why no one paid attention when he was in pain and felt alone in his struggle with pain and suffering, and it made him suffer a lot. And all his jumping was a consequence of his death. This morning he drowned saving someone in the river, and here he woke up here in this mysterious place after his death. The women could not understand what nonsense he was talking, because it was an absolute untruth, which only confused the situation even more, leaving them bewildered. Realizing that the conversation had come to an end, he headed to his grandmother's house to say goodbye, leaving them to their own thoughts about what had happened. They were quite startled, but relieved when they realized they had never dealt with this crazy guy, much less shared a close relationship with him. The boy kept looking for his grandmother all over the village. The scream of the ghost of a young man's ghost, Ling Tian, who died alone. His parents used it to scare children who didn't want to go to bed, was going around. Lin felt puzzled as to why he couldn't discover her whereabouts regardless of his efforts. The only relative she had a connection to was only her grandmother, and that was the only family connection she had left. Suddenly, Lin noticed a dog named Yellowy. It happened at the very moment he was thinking about his search problem. Lin, noticing a dog named Yellowtail, approached him to ask if he happened to know the whereabouts of his grandmother, whom he had been looking for so long and could not find. Lin noticed that Yellow's dog's tongue was warm and moist upon contact. This observation made him curious and interested in the dog's state of health. This is when the realization came to Lin. Dead people don't feel temperature. This penetration meant that the warm tongue of Yellow's dog indicated that he was still alive. And then Lin looked into the dog's beak and realized that his grandmother was still alive, because there was no reflection of dead words from his reflection in the beak. He couldn't believe he survived the car collision. If he wasn't Sylvester Stallone, he'd probably be dead. However, there is a verification method that will help to see if he is alive or dead. This method will determine his condition with reliability and finality. As soon as Lin got home, his first action was to instantly open his laptop. He was impatient to know what had happened in his absence and check his email or other important messages. This action will not result in anyone, no matter who tries it. It will not be successful or have the desired effect on anyone. Lin was convinced that the action he was about to take would have a positive effect on him and be successful, even despite the circumstances or the doubts of those around him. This option is completely risk-free and promises guaranteed success with no opportunity for loss or failure. Every boy has a dream of becoming a pirate, free to search for treasure chests all over the world, then hide the treasure that only they know about and mark it so that others can't find it, but they can enjoy it whenever they want. And including Lin has his own treasure box that he has collected with great difficulty. This box contains his priceless creations made without teachers, from all over the world. He won't be able to sell the damn computer even if he doesn't have enough money because it's too valuable to him. So, he had a delete key, a forbidden button that he never dared to press while he was alive. If he decided to press it, it would mean that he was willing to sacrifice his life. If he didn't decide to press it, it would mean that he was still alive. It was a huge test for him, and now he is going to test whether he is alive or dead. His fate depends on his decision. His heart was full of devotion, and he was ready to do so, but his hand did not move, perhaps because of his inner strength of will kept him from this action. His back reminded him of the cowardice he now felt inside. It wasn't pleasant. He had jumped into the river to save someone without even thinking of the danger or consequences. Despite his desire to save someone and accept the challenge, he has a sense of fear and resists pressing a common button because the action could lead to unpredictable consequences or loss of control. In other words, his own honest body is telling him that he feels fear of pressing that button. This inner feeling is warning him and telling him that there is a potential danger or risk associated with this action. He felt that he was still alive. Today's events confirmed the reality of his situation. There was room for worry inside him, but he kept moving forward. Lin found it hard to believe that he was really alive. Perhaps the events that were happening or his inner experiences were causing doubt and uncertainty about his reality. He may have felt shock upon realizing his existence. He felt that he was returning to his healthy state, and it was wonderful. He was glad that he had not been abandoned and that he was still alive. Being alive was a precious and valuable gift to him. The moment he wanted to just slap the table to express his inner joy and excitement. He realized he would regret that slap more than anything else in the world. He realized he needed to stay calm and in control of his emotions. He really put his full force into that punch. He expressed his energy and passion through that gesture, trying to release the accumulated emotional tension inside him. Unfortunately, at that very instant his laptop literally exploded. The explosion interrupted his expression of emotion and caused shock and amazement. He was dumbfounded and felt the frustration of losing his laptop. After 10 minutes of extinguishing efforts, the flames were finally extinguished. He felt relieved to see the fire dwindling and thanked fate that a major disaster had been averted. The protagonist realized that he no longer wished to continue living in this sense. He felt a deep frustration and loss of meaning in his life, which led to a strong desire to change his situation. He was overly surprised to see the starry sky open before his eyes. The splendor and beauty of the night sky captured his perception, evoking a sense of delight and grandeur of the universe. The protagonist was confused. He could not understand why he could suddenly see stars. It caused him a sense of surprise and bewilderment. As he had not had this experience before, he wondered what could be the cause of this phenomenon, and suddenly he began to see his bones that seemed to shine through his body. It was a startling and frightening sight that caused him mixed feelings of amazement, anxiety and incomprehension. He wondered what could be the cause of such a phenomenon. The protagonist realized that he had the ability to see through things and objects. This led him to think that perhaps he had indeed become the host of an alien soul that had saved his life. He began to reflect on the changes that had occurred to his body and how this soul had transformed his existence. This mosquito was coming right at the protagonist. He noticed the insect slowly approaching him, causing him to feel uncomfortable and want to swat it away. To the protagonist's surprise, he was able to technically grab a mosquito without having to turn around. This was unusual for him, as he did not expect to possess such agility and reaction. To the surprise of the protagonist, he skillfully and very quickly managed to grab the mosquito approaching him, showing amazing agility and reaction. If the protagonist focuses on what he wants to see, he is easily able to see through it. It is a special quality of his perception or ability that allows him to penetrate through the surface and reveal hidden aspects of what is in front of him. The main character seemed to have the ability to sense the world around him so deeply that he seemed to be able to be touched physically. The main character suddenly realizes that he is indeed able to literally touch his heart, revealing the depths of his inner world and gaining insight into his true feelings and desires. The protagonist, determined to fully test his abilities, literally took out his heart. This daring and risky action showed his determination and drive to explore the depths of his existence. The cells in his body have undergone major changes to further evolve, activating abilities beyond those of the normal human coming in to replace him. He discovered that he is able to control every cell of his body in accordance with his consciousness, including transmission, strengthening, restoration. Transformation discovered that he is able to control every cell of his body in accordance with his consciousness, including transmission, strengthening, restoration, transformation, and a host of other special abilities that seem unlimited. Eventually, the guy decided to put his heart back where it belonged. He realized that his abilities could be powerful, but he realized the importance of keeping his essence and connection to human emotions. The protagonist, upon getting into the car, triggered the strengthening and repair of his body, and realized his ability to transform, allowing him to change his physical form and adapt to different situations. Suddenly, his hand transformed into something incomprehensible and unpredictable, causing surprise and some alarm to the protagonist. The guy is convinced he has the ability to transform into anything, be it leather, steel, or anything else. As if wearing impenetrable armor that provides him with protection and strength. He couldn't stay in this state for longer than a few seconds and felt his energy run out in the blink of an eye. However, when he took out his heart, he felt that the energy consumption of manipulating body cells was huge. This meant that if he wanted to use his abilities in the future, he needed a lot of energy. He realized that energy storage depended on the food in his body. Basically, he had to find something to eat and build up fat reserves. He went inside and realized that he really needed food, but he was so poor that he couldn't afford to buy food or anything to eat. He detected the smell from his moldy cottage cheese or dried lemon, and realized it was the only thing he had for nourishment. Now he could go and eat it to get at least a small portion of food. He made himself a simple little sandwich and gratefully accepted it. Although it was a modest meal, it gave him some strength and satiated his hunger. He was overjoyed to finally have something to eat. The feeling of being full and his hunger quenched caused him great joy and gratitude. The next morning, he was approached by a family whose parents were looking for their child who had gotten lost and spent the night by the river where he was sleeping. Puffy knocked anxiously on the door and told him to open it because the family was looking for their child who had spent the night by the river and was in danger. The main character couldn't realize how long he had slept last night because his sleep was so deep and silent. He felt he had lost control of time and was puzzled as to how this could have happened. He instantly realized that this was the same child he had met yesterday by the river. However, it was unclear to him how the child was able to find him and get to his house. It gave him a sense of wonder and bewilderment. After his transformation, all of his clothes became tight, making him realize the need to update his closet to find the right clothes for his new condition. Lin went out to the family and was pleasantly surprised and grateful to them for finding him and bringing him back to bring the missing child back to safety. The boy immediately rushed to hug Lin, expressing his joy at seeing him and his gratitude for his help and support. The girl reported that they had a hard time finding him, but Lin was also curious to know how they were still able to do it. Yesterday, he lost his cell phone, documents and some of his clothes by the river, but his families above him managed to wash and iron his clothes, returning all his belongings in good condition, and came today to thank him. The girl reached out to her parents and said he was the exact same guy who rescued her pet Puffy yesterday. The parents froze in bewilderment, their faces expressing shock and surprise, and they were speechless, unable to find the words to react to such unexpected information. Ling Tian greeted his parents and informed them with a smile on his face that his name was Ling Tian, but they could just call him Xiaoling if they felt more comfortable. The father began to express his gratitude to Lin for saving Puffy and said that if he ever needed help, the family would always be there for him in appreciation. When they decided to all express their gratitude to their savior together, Lin couldn't bear such attention and asked them to stop. Lin said that if no one minded his mess in the house, he invited everyone to come in and sit down so they could socialize and spend time together. His parents noticed that Lin didn't look so grown up, but about the same age as their son Xiaofei. They were interested in where he worked and what he did. He said he is 25 years old, previously worked for the city but became ill and was laid off. He is now fully recovered and ready for new opportunities and challenges in life. The parents confidently expressed the view that his dismissal due to illness was unfair as he was young and had the potential for a successful future. Yesterday when they heard about it from their daughter, it was very exciting for them. The mother was glad that Lin was there and realized that he was living alone. She assured him that if he had any problems he could go to his aunt and uncle and they would do their best to help him. The protagonist thanked them profusely, but also assured them that he would not be an inconvenience to them and would handle the problems himself if they arose. The protagonist shouldn't worry. After all, he is a benefactor to his parents, and doesn't have to return the favor. If he feels ashamed to communicate with them, he can talk to the girl. Anyway, Xiaofei still feels lonely, so if they can be friends, it will be great. The girl interrupted her father abruptly, expressing her displeasure at his words and disagreeing with them. She clearly didn't approve of what he was saying and decided to intervene to stop it. She stated that she would take responsibility for her own future and was confident enough in her abilities. She also expressed annoyance that her father always only talks about his problems and shows no interest in her plans and desires. She asked him to ignore his speech, saying that her father always says that and predicts disasters that don't actually happen. When her younger brother said she was so red as a monkey's ass, she got annoyed and told him to stay out of her business. The kid realized that she was probably remembering what had happened yesterday with her older brother, and a lot of people had noticed it. They had seen her emotional reaction or noticed that she was brooding. It turned out that the guy was performing CPR at the time and not speaking out about the girl. However, as it turned out, the girl still saved his life. The mother reminded them that they were guests and therefore rules and etiquette should be followed. She emphasized the importance of respecting their hosts and maintaining harmony while in someone else's home. The man instantly felt a sharp pain in his collarbone area, which caused him discomfort and required medical intervention to check and alleviate the unpleasant symptoms. Everyone immediately immediately began to express concern about their father's condition. Revealing signs of worry and concern on their faces, they immediately turned to him to find out what had happened and how to help him. The men assured everyone that he was fine and that it was just a common injury from an accidental blow that happened yesterday. At that very moment, the daughter noticed that her father's nose started to bleed. This alarmed her and she immediately offered help and called for medical assistance. Immediately afterwards, the man abruptly put his head down on the table and lost consciousness, causing panic and anxiety in those around him. Everyone immediately realized the seriousness of the situation and took action to help him. Everyone around them was in a terrible state of mind at what was happening to the man and felt great horror and anxiety about his health. The situation was causing them great worry and uncertainty. The girl realized to her horror that his eyes, being suddenly opened, were not only wide dilated, but devoid of any response, like the eyes of a dead man gazing into a vast void. It was alarming considering the man usually had high blood pressure and it could be a sign of a stroke. Worry overwhelmed her as she realized the gravity of the situation. She asked the boyfriend to help carry her father to a flat surface, realizing that the situation required immediate intervention and assistance. The protagonist immediately supported the request and helped carry his father to a flat surface, showing determination and willingness to handle the situation without too much hesitation. Just at that moment, the girl noticed the injury on her father's body, and horror swept over her, realizing that the situation was far more serious than she could have anticipated. The mother was also silent, unaware of the trauma her daughter had noticed, and their silence was filled with anxiety and uncertainty in the face of unforeseen danger. No wonder she had that look on her face before, considering the current trauma that could cause such pain like blunt force trauma. The mother, realizing the seriousness of the situation, instantly dialed the ambulance service and begged them to arrive immediately, despite her lack of understanding of what was happening. When she was informed that the ambulance would take half an hour, she was even more concerned, realizing that the patient's condition would not allow for a long wait. The protagonist and the girl finally reach the man and lay him down carefully. Realizing that time is playing against them and the situation requires immediate intervention, the girl begged him just to survive, promising that she would take care of him for the rest of his life, willing to devote all her care and love to make him well. She turned to the guy to ask what they should do, given that at this rate, her father wouldn't be able to stand it for long. They'd be faced with harsh reality and tough decisions. Lin realized that he needed to come up with a plan and get into action. Realizing that time was not playing on their side and every minute mattered, the younger brother suddenly entered and turned to his sister, catching her attention at a critical moment when every minute was becoming important and precious. But as it turned out, something happened to Mom too, adding a new layer of worry and responsibility to the already tense atmosphere that engulfed the family at this difficult moment. Suddenly, the mother also fell to the ground, multiplying the panic and anxiety in the family, which was already at its wit's end, facing a series of unforeseen and frightening events. Xiaofei didn't know what to do. After all, she had just dealt with one trouble, and already the next wave of problems was rising, making her feel helpless before the flood of unpredictable events. Lin reassured them that everything would be okay, trying to maintain hope and optimism during this difficult time when fear and anxiety raged. He might try to save his uncle, but there was no guarantee of success. Let her give him a few minutes alone and take care of his mother without telling anyone anything. The girl didn't know what to answer him and just kept silent, wrapped in misunderstanding and mixed feelings. Unable to find words in this moment of difficult decisions, the protagonist persistently urged her to take action, realizing that she needed to start acting before it was too late. Despite her indecisiveness, still, the girl recovered a little and announced that she was on her way out, deciding to take the initiative and leave the situation that was overwhelming her. As it turned out, Mom was fine and it was just a normal fainting spell, which was a relief and eased the tension in the family a bit. The woman admitted that the men may have been injured by village hooligans, adding a new element of mystery to the already existing situation, raising even more questions and anxiety. Yesterday he didn't have enough money to pay his rent. He was beaten up because of it, but her father probably hid the truth because the treatment was expensive. He was always frugal and said he was saving for her future. He is honest and worked hard all his life. Had to live this way. Xiaofei tried hard to reassure the woman, assuring her that they would definitely get through this situation, keeping her hopeful and optimistic during the difficult moment. Realizing that she now needed to reassure her mother, she took this task upon herself, knowing that support and calmness were necessary in such a situation. The protagonist used his X-ray vision to get to the bottom of the problem, realizing that this was the only way he could unravel the mysteries and find solutions. There seems to be more to this case than meets the eye, hinting at hidden aspects of the situation that may be a clue. Uncle has probably been working hard for a long time, but this injury and the pain he's been in has turned into a real illness and his body is in bad shape. The ambulance won't arrive for a quarter of an hour at the earliest, but even if they do, he's afraid he's too slow. Although he was never given the opportunity to experience fatherhood firsthand, it can be argued that he is a good father and an integral part of this family. He wasn't sure, of course, but he decided to try to cure him, realizing that it might be the only chance he had of saving his uncle and restoring family harmony. Now that he had gained the ability to control the movement of his cells and heal his body, he thought about the possibility of using that power on others, including possibly draining the blood from his brain. After he extracts the blood from the brain, he can help repair the ruptured vessels, and he should try to use his abilities for that purpose. Indeed, things were beginning to work, and it looked like the girl would once again be indebted to him for his help and rescue in this difficult situation. At this pace he would be able to gradually extract all the blood, moving carefully and methodically through the process so as not to cause additional harm to his uncle. He began to concentrate and slowly drain the blood from his body, carefully monitoring the process to minimize any possible negative effects on his uncle. After that, he needed to heal the ruptured blood vessels to prevent additional problems and ensure normal circulation in his uncle's body. The woman continued to cry heavily, not knowing how to proceed now, feeling lost and without strength, and searching for answers to worry at this difficult moment. The girl knew that if Lin could really save her father, she would do her best to repay him for it, willing to make any sacrifice. At this point, the main character came out to them, embedding himself in the setting and ready to take part in solving the problem. Showing his determination and willingness to help, he assured them that everything was fine and suggested that they go check on their father to see how he was doing and to be supportive during this difficult time. The girl or guy is really not lying, confirming their sincerity and reliability in communication, which creates trust and confidence in them. Why does she even trust this guy, even if it's the most unbelievable thing that could happen? Maybe she sees something special in him that makes her believe. She gently lifted the woman up, inviting her to join them and go to her husband, eager to support her in this difficult moment and bring the family together. As they entered the room, the men did rise, the signs of his revival bringing relief and hope to the hearts of all present. Waking up in an unfamiliar place with people around him, he experienced mixed feelings and inner turmoil, questions swirling in his head about how he ended up here and why he was sleeping here. With joy, the family exclaimed and embraced the men, barely hearing the news of his well-being, their hearts filled with gratitude and joy that he had returned alive and unharmed. With instant joy and relief, they rushed to him, hugging and holding him tightly, as if not believing their own eyes, but feeling their presence as a precious gift. As if in a whirlwind, the man remembers only a sudden plunge into darkness, and now, awakening, he feels as if he has just closed his eyes, full of energy and feeling perfectly fine. Well, when he woke up, he saw Xiaolin, badly tired after a night of no sleep, his face a reflection of fighting the invisible demons of the previous night and the incessant thoughts of the upcoming trials. Lin said he was fine, trying to reassure everyone, adding that it wasn't that serious, as if trying to hide real feelings and concern behind a slight smile. The mother believed that the arrival of the boy in their lives was a God-given blessing, a type of hope and support that brought a fresh perspective and new possibilities into their family. But the girl thought it was a serious situation, and she couldn't help but notice that the guy had saved her, though she still didn't understand exactly how he had done it, agonizing over the mystery of his saving act. This is definitely not God's blessing, she thought, realizing that she had promised the guy to keep his secret a secret, which led her into deepening doubts and indecision about what was going on. Now the man needs some rest after what happened to regain his strength and reflect on what happened, trying to find answers to the questions that worry his soul. At that moment they did not notice that the guy simply fell off his feet, and only now realized that he himself needed help and support after what had happened. But Lin explained that the guy was probably just hungry because he hadn't eaten breakfast, which was the reason for his sudden fainting, causing the others to be relieved and surprised. The girl noticed how the boy's hands were shaking and he seemed to have lost weight, which caused her to worry and fear for his health, making her wonder about possible reasons for such changes. It must have cost him a lot to save Dad, the girl pondered, wondering why the guy had decided to help them twice even though they were only casual acquaintances, causing her to feel grateful and respectful of his selflessness. Their family hadn't had breakfast either, nor had they booked a hotel in advance, so it wasn't until they arrived in town that they offered the guy a ride with them, thanking him for his help and offering support. When the girl decided to help him, he said he was fine and could move around on his own, but her heart still remained filled with anxiety and concern for his well-being. At this point the girl turned to him, expressing her alarm and offering him her hand in a gesture of support and assistance, ready to render any help necessary. She asked permission to help him, as if wanting to affirm her willingness to stand by his side and support him in difficult moments, awaiting his response with hope and attention. He had walked in and out of that door thousands of times since he was a child, but probably never expected this day to to come, the day when he would cross the threshold and life would begin in earnest, opening before him a whole new, beautiful world full of possibilities and unknown horizons. When they finally arrived at the restaurant, the guy realized that he hadn't eaten so well in a long time, feeling a rush of energy and strength after the difficult events of the previous day. Afterward he exclaimed that all his expended energy had returned, feeling revitalized and full of vigor, as if inspired by the new beginning and prospects that had opened before him. Of course, everyone present could not understand what he was saying, exchanging surprised glances and trying to figure out the meaning of his words, which remained a mystery to them. Now they would probably think there was something wrong with him, having met him when he ate, though in fact he is no longer the same, noting the internal changes that have taken place in him since his experiences. But the men supported him by saying that young guys like him should eat well, showing understanding and care, which gave him confidence and pushed him to realize the importance of taking care of his own health. His mother suggested that he come over more often and eat dinner together, stating that they would always have extra portions of food and that he might enjoy her cooking, eliciting a smile and appreciation from him for such warmth and care. And the boy, finding himself in such a situation, will ask his older brother to teach him how to swim. When his sister starts bullying him, he will hide in the water, where she can no longer catch up with him, finding in this an escape from trouble and comfort. The girl decided that in such a case it was better to punish him in advance to prevent similar situations in the future and to show that bullying would not remain without consequences. Seeking to protect her brother from possible trouble, Lin replied gratefully that he would gladly accept their invitation, provided they didn't mind his enormous appetite, assuring them that he would be sure to stop by, ready to enjoy their company and delicious food. After lunch, even something changed. Lin ate a lot, and Uncle had to pay for everything, which caused the others to be surprised and laugh, creating an atmosphere of joy and merriment around the table. Xiaofei said that she wouldn't be able to join them as she had some things to do. Expressing regret for her absence and missing the opportunity to spend time together, she suggested that the guy join her, saying that if he wasn't busy, let him go with her, perhaps hinting at a desire to spend time together and share some business or just socialize. The guy promised to bring the girl back safe and sound, as if promising her his protection and safety during their absence, evoking a sense of confidence and calm in her. The girl couldn't understand what had happened between her father and boyfriend, puzzled as to what events or conversations might have caused their strange relationship or conflict. And then the family left, and the guy would spend time with the girl alone, saying goodbye to her and perhaps expressing his gratitude for the hospitality and good times they'd had. The woman couldn't figure out if the guy was really so innocent or if he was just pretending, wondering if he was hiding something or if his behavior was sincere, causing her to doubt and distrust him. He was unusual in that he risked his life to save a relative, and this set him apart from ordinary people who might not have been able to make such a decision, setting his selflessness and courage apart from others. The men had something to tell and show, arousing curiosity and anticipation in those around him, ready to listen and learn about something important or interesting. The man's injury was completely gone, and the woman could hardly understand what was happening, feeling mixed feelings of surprise and bewilderment at the sudden change in his condition, which seemed almost miraculous. After being beaten yesterday, his bones and head hurt and he didn't remember what happened, but this morning he passed out, only slightly feeling someone supporting him. Upon waking up, the headache was gone, his shoulder was healed, and he saw Lin completely drained of his strength, which made him anxious and eager to help. The woman asked him if he wanted to say that this guy had cured him, but the girl explained that he had a bleed in his brain and she couldn't understand how he could have cured it, causing mixed feelings of surprise and bewilderment in everyone around him. He doesn't know what's going on, but with all the services this person is providing, it seems more than favorable. Xiaofei, who usually doesn't like to be around strangers, apparently stayed there to ask him about these things. If all goes so well, he would prefer to marry his daughter to him, even if he is considered scum in the village, showing a willingness to accept him for his qualities and merit rather than public opinion. From now on, Xiaoling would no longer come to their house, and they would behave impolitely, as they felt that they owed him a lot and were not going to say a word about today's events for fear of possible trouble. The girl suggested a walk in the park, seeking to create an atmosphere of calm and an opportunity for open communication, trying to release tension and improve the mood after recent events. They agreed that he would now call her Xiaofei, establishing a more intimate and trusting atmosphere in their relationship, reflecting the level of closeness and understanding between them. Their walk was interesting, but something seemed different than usual, causing mixed feelings and misunderstandings that they both felt but couldn't clearly define. Now that he was full of energy, he didn't need to hold on to her hand so tightly, creating a sense of freedom and independence that they could both feel together. Realizing the change in their relationship, the girl was shy. It happened unconsciously, reflecting her inner turmoil and uncertainty about her feelings or behavior in a new situation, which made their interaction a bit awkward. The protagonist realized that he probably said that to her for nothing, realizing that his words may have been misconstrued or caused her further distress, and he now regretted his words. When he tried to remedy the situation, she replied that he could walk on his own, showing his independence and perhaps implying that she didn't want to depend on him or be under his tutelage. At some point, the three men noticed the girl, attracted by her presence or behavior, causing them to take an interest and pay attention to her. One of them said he wanted to grab her right now. Lin assumed that she wanted to ask him if he had any special abilities, and he decided to deceive her without revealing the whole truth. He also noticed that today he didn't use his abilities to save her from her father, perhaps hiding his real nature or purpose. In fact, until yesterday, he was terminally ill and was preparing for an imminent death. When the girl's brother fell into the water, he decided to use the rest of his life to save him. As a result, he gained an ability that not only cured his own terminal illness but also gave him the ability to cure the illnesses of others. This became a real blessing to him, but he wanted to hide this ability from others to avoid unwanted attention or misunderstanding. The girl did relate to this opinion, but it was true. However, he decided to share this secret with her, probably because he felt a special closeness and trust for her, and wished her to understand his real motives and actions. He warned her that if she told anyone, he would kill her first, rejecting his image as an honest man in front of her parents, recognizing that it was all just a sham, since he had actually been a real criminal in high school, and now with his ability, he was able to kill while remaining undetected. Of course, the girl didn't believe he was such a person, and the guy erupted in anger at her disbelief, reacting with emotional outrage at her mistrust and rejection. He has already saved 2 lives in their family, and he is truly a kind man, so even if something happens that hurts her, she won't blame him. Considering his previous acts of kindness and rescues, she believed that if it was someone else, he would have saved him as well, never thinking about the reward. Considering it fate, his abilities he got thanks to her brother, and his longtime dream was to be near his family, so he couldn't tolerate others losing their loved ones and becoming like him with only negative feelings. The girl stated that they are his family from now on, and her parents and brother sincerely appreciate him, recognizing his importance and significance in their lives. He thanked her and expressed his appreciation for her family's kindness to him, emphasizing that he certainly didn't mind being treated that way. After thanking her, he hugged her from behind, the gesture conveying her support and warmth, strengthening the bond between them and affirming their new family unity. She persisted in urging him to accept the gratitude, not understanding why she had felt such affection for him since they had first met, as if they had known each other all their lives. The girl explained that she had accidentally soiled his clothes, adding that it wasn't a problem and if he didn't mind, she could try to fix the situation from the other side. Asking the girl to wait, he promised to bring juice, the gesture expressing his concern for her and his willingness to satisfy her desires. Xiaofei noticed that the guy was acting like a puppy, reflecting his playfulness and defenselessness, causing her to feel tender or amused. As she approached the aquarium, she saw a multitude of fish, marveling at their variety and beauty, feeling amazed and delighted by this living world under the water. And it was at that moment that those 3 approached her, causing her to feel a sense of surprise or even some unease at their appearance. They noticed that she was even more alert than they had expected, perhaps marveling at her energy or liveliness, which exceeded their expectations. One of the guys, seeing her alone, suddenly felt the urge to take her to a cozy place where time flows slowly. The atmosphere is filled with peace and warmth, where they could enjoy the moment together. Following this, he started claiming that he would not leave as she was waiting for a boyfriend who would surely come back soon, and he did not want to disappoint her expectations. The men gently told her that she didn't have to wait for him now because she had them now, and anyway they were interrupting her date. He reassured her by telling her that she shouldn't worry because she would be back to her boyfriend soon. Immediately after the words, the girl literally slapped him, expressing rage for interfering. This unexpected gesture silenced him, realizing he had crossed an invisible boundary. His partner instantly shared the pain he felt, as if the force of the blow had been transmitted to him as well, their bond tangible even in the most unexpected moments. He then immediately stated that the men who grabbed the girl should be stopped immediately. She couldn't understand how he dared to kidnap people on the street and promised that she would call the police, determined to do everything she could to stop his criminal actions. But even if someone saw them, that person wouldn't dare interfere, because as it turned out, his name was Bud, and his influence was quite significant. Suddenly, out of the darkness like a shadow, an unknown person swooped in, flashing something in his hand. They barely had time to react when blows began to rain down on them, forcing them to retreat and defend themselves. His partners noticed how he suddenly turned into a wolf and instantly rushed towards the water, disappearing into its depths as if drawn by an inexorable whirlpool, leaving them stunned and bewildered. It was powerful, and the main characters still underestimate their power without fully realizing the potential they suddenly discovered in themselves at that moment. They couldn't figure out how the guy had gotten back so quickly, considering the round trip usually took a considerable amount of time, leaving a mystery for them to solve. Lin, with an angry glint in his eyes, repeated his words, insisting on the girl's release, and in a tone that was fear-inducing, asked if they also wished to leave the place, hinting at the possible consequences. The partner, filled with determination, instantly ran to Paco, eager to save him from the danger that now threatened not only them but their ally as well. a couple of grown men abusing a little girl. Shame on them. The men claimed he had nothing to do with the situation and didn't even come close, while amazingly ignoring the little girl's suffering. Immediately afterward, Lin attacked him, expressing his anger and resentment towards his immoral actions that did not tolerate excuses or apologies. To the men's surprise, at this point he literally shit himself, which was an unexpected turn of events and caused shock and disgust. The guy couldn't find juice, but he did find one of those milk teas that have become so popular lately, which surprised him and made it a little easier. Lin warned that they were getting out of here and asked the girl to ignore what was happening so as not to get into a dangerous situation. Paco, erupting with rage over the guy's behavior, expressed his outrage and emphasized that the two of them stood together as a united front in this situation. He started claiming that they regularly socialize with Major General Lee Sung-guk, pointing to that as the reason why the guy has no right to hit him. The protagonist was interested in asking if the girl knew about the men he had just heard about. She admitted she didn't know much about him, but noticed that the Lee family, world famous, was involved in a serious heredity dispute, which piqued the protagonist's interest. The protagonist realized that given the situation, it was best for them not to interfere further with the case and leave it without their intervention. Paco was afraid it was too late, and they weren't going anywhere, even if they weren't expecting mercy, because time had simply run out to make a difference. He asked if they wanted to get rid of him already, realizing that perhaps they no longer needed his presence and waiting anxiously for an answer. Suddenly he remembered how his classmates bullied him at school because of his weakness. He realized that such people could only attack the weak. Paco was in such amazement that his eyes popped outward. It happened so fast that he didn't even realize what was happening. How fast it happened. After everything turned upside down, they suddenly exchanged places. The one who seemed strong became vulnerable, and the one who previously seemed weak suddenly gained strength and determination. Suddenly realizing that a friend was in danger, one of the partners decided to help by summoning strength and determination and began to attack the enemy, showing faith in friendship and solidarity. While it seemed to them that nothing mattered anymore except the deadly struggle in the game, the important moment was the realization that they were killing people despite the circumstances. Suddenly, at this moment, the knife that stabbed into the guy's back started to move slowly, piercing through his body, causing a sudden fright and helplessness in everyone present. The protagonist asked if they thought he was here joking with them, expressing his bewilderment and possible displeasure at their lack of understanding of the seriousness of the situation. And right after that, he decisively pulled something small right out of his hand, thus expressing his readiness for further action or defense. With the utterance of words forbidding the attack to continue, he sharply plunged the knife straight into the man's head, demonstrating his determination to defend himself and his loved ones by any means available. He was amazed at how quickly everything had happened, for he couldn't understand how this could have happened. Wondering in bewilderment how he had gotten himself into this situation, he instantly began lying, claiming he was dying and begging for a doctor, hoping to save his life and avoid punishment for his act. Despite his claims, surprise mingled with his condition. He felt no pain in his head, saw no blood and felt it flow. There was nerve damage around the blade, so he's not hurt or bleeding, and he just needs to go to the hospital and have the surgeon remove the knife to avoid jeopardizing his health. He then let Paco go, releasing him from further exposure and allowing him free rein to control his own destiny. He announced that they had come for the girl, and that the decision of what to do with them belonged solely to her, respecting her right to free choice and her own decision. Xiaofei felt perplexed as to why she was being asked. After all, she herself had no idea of the situation. She was completely bewildered. She suggested simply warning them with a couple words expressing a desire to avoid conflict and misunderstandings, outlining the importance of clear communication in such situations to prevent unnecessary problems. The protagonist understood and said he would honor her request, showing a willingness to dialogue and respect for the opinions and wishes of others involved in the events. His girlfriend remarked that things don't usually settle so easily, suggesting that they first have to deal with the unpleasant piece they've been through in order to achieve true freedom. It was too much even for the brave girl. From the point of view of the protagonist, who realized that his girlfriend's suggestion was too radical and inapplicable to the situation at hand, Paco was sure the guy wasn't going to make him swallow that shit, or he'd threaten to kill his entire family. Showing cruelty and ruthlessness in his threats, he warned him not to be impertinent to him, ordering him to prepare his last words, emphasizing the seriousness of his intentions and his readiness to act. He will then die the first of their company, leaving behind a dark legacy and a reminder that the consequences of rash actions can be deadly. They had been in this business for a long time and today they had hit the jackpot. He was glad they were all here to share their successes and failures, although they weren't real brothers. After today's event they would be. That wasn't what the girl had meant, and she was disgusted by what he did. It made her cringe, almost making her vomit. She had been tried to be kidnapped and it seemed it wasn't the first time for their kidnappers. He felt he was failing at what he had to do. If it wasn't for his help she would have been kidnapped. The girl asked him not to be very angry and immediately apologized to him in an effort to reconcile and resolve the conflict. Realizing the importance of maintaining good relations and harmony, she realized that it was necessary to avoid annoying this major general in order to avoid trouble. Realizing the importance of maintaining good relations with the influential people in their circle, since they are subdued, it means he is willing to act as a target. Realizing that he is obligated to protect the girl even if they are surrounded and try to kill instantly, the girl dialed someone's number, and immediately the question arose as to why she was calling, since she was off duty today, causing curiosity and bewilderment in those around her. Her colleague reported that there was an emergency right in front of the hospital, and this is already being streamed live on the internet, attracting public attention and concern. A doctor from the hospital was taken hostage, threatening him with violence, raising fears for his safety and creating a tense situation around the incident. She apologized to the guy, but said he needed to go back to the hospital and only then could he come see her. All of this is only a few kilometers away, but there are rarely cabs here, making it extra difficult to get around and inconvenient. At that moment, the protagonist noticed a guy sitting near his motorcycle, drawing attention with his presence, which added an unexpected twist to the current situation. He looked at the protagonist while he enjoyed his ice cream, arousing curiosity with his gaze and the unexpected combination of the setting. The protagonist then stole his motorcycle and told the guy to pick it up himself near the hospital, drawing attention to the unconventional solution to the problem. The strangers asked him to calm down and expressed their willingness to consider his demands. If he had any demands, let him provide them and they would discuss. He asked not to be flooded or made to repeat it again, expressing his hope for understanding and cooperation from others to avoid unnecessary tension and conflict. Today he is determined to fight them to the end. He's not going to sit in jail, and they can't even dream of that. There was a rumor among the crowd that he was the son of the district mayor who had been in a car accident with someone and was injured, so he was sent here for emergency treatment. Then the city police chief named Zhou Ting-ho appeared. Right now the eye is in a bad state. Let him think about curing it before thinking of anything else. He was sure the doctor was trying to take out his eye, not to draw it. He wasn't that stupid. Such fear had him about to leave the country for safety. The chief was then informed that drugs were found in his car. He was probably under the influence of drugs. This news suddenly jolted him into realizing the seriousness of the situation and caused a wave of anxiety. Then his mother showed up and started asking her son if he was okay, giving her the care and support that was so needed at this difficult time. She told him to be afraid, because only a few people had been killed and no one would pay for it. His mother promised to take him to a doctor overseas where there were cures for anything that caused anxiety. She said her husband to sign up. He has such a wonderful child. If anything happened to him, she would sue the cop to protect her son. She began making introductions and saying that the police were bullying her, lowering her voice but expressing a clear and unwavering determination. Everyone present pushed to the conclusion that the mayor's wife is an arrogant bitch, showing their opinion of her erogenous behavior and leaving little room for doubt in their judgment. The boy demands that the policeman release the mother immediately or they will release her, or he threatens to kill the doctor. Expressing rage and determination in his words, the men insisted on letting the mother in to see her son, expressing a desire to provide family unity and support in a difficult situation. The mother then tripped and fell, causing additional anxiety and tension, suddenly disrupting the flow of events and adding unpredictability to the situation. She barely scratched her arm, but started making a spectacle of it, screaming about cops hurting people by increasing the emotional tension around them. The boy told the police officer that he got behind his mother in expressing his seriousness and emphasized that this was not the time to joke or underestimate the seriousness of the situation. Immediately thereafter, he took a swing at the helpless woman, creating a moment of tension and danger that could have exacerbated the situation already in place. Everyone present was amazed at what had happened, suddenly confronted with a situation that made them ponder and shook their expectations. As the events unfolded, it became clear that the guy was already drunk and attacked the doctor with a knife. Much to the shock and horror of everyone present, the guy immediately became remorseful and said he didn't mean to do it, expressing regret and realization of what had happened. Police officers swooped down on the killer as quickly as possible, responding with speed and decisiveness to end the threat and ensure the safety of the others present. Doctors instantly began transporting her to the hospital to treat her, acting quickly and efficiently in response to the incident. The doctor's heart had almost stopped and the profuse bleeding required immediate stopping to preserve his life and provide him with the care he needed. All present together worried about the doctor's fate, united by a common sense of anxiety and hope for his recovery, expressing support and solidarity in this difficult moment. Xiaofei met Shizuku and said that she was in the neighborhood and immediately came here as soon as she was called, expressing her willingness to help in times of need. It's very hard considering the doctor is almost 80 years old but she still goes on duty. The doctor is very kind. She was the one who cured her eyes that she had been having problems with for years. Some believe that the doctor may have provoked the child to undergo surgery, and the police outside only made the situation worse, with the result that the child's life thus lost lost will become worthless in the eyes of the mayor and others. The guy and the girl had been watching the whole situation from afar the whole time, staying in the background and keeping some distance from what was happening. He used to frequent the hospital and often encountered sarcastic people, so he had learned not to take it personally and to keep his cool. It's not that she cares, it's just that she can't understand why this happened to Dr. Lee in particular, how many clients she's treated, how many students he's trained in his lifetime. Lin himself was frustrated over this and didn't know what to reply. Feeling a mixture of bewilderment and disappointment at such an unexpected turn of events, the dean came out to the crowd, and they immediately began asking him about the doctor's condition, showing concern and interest in what was happening, creating a tense atmosphere of anticipation and anxiety. The man then began to shake his head negatively, expressing his disapproval or displeasure, perhaps in response to unpleasant news or situation. Xiaofei became even more upset and hugged the guy, seeking comfort and support in his arms during the difficult moment. Then the commissioner, who was the doctor's son, arrived and his son was also with him, perhaps to provide support and assistance in this difficult situation. He was informed that they had done all they could and his mother passed away, leaving him grieving the unexpected loss. Piercing his heart with a deep sense of loss, the commissioner, who was present at this moment, suddenly began to lose consciousness, which caused excitement and anxiety among those present, increasing the tension and uncertainty around what was happening. Now he sees the commissioner simply as a son broadcasting his old mother in the hospital. He always said it was time to retire, but she wouldn't listen, claiming that the more you see the more light you bring. The main character, reminding the girl of the past, asked if she remembered how he saved her father. This could have been the key to revealing important details about their relationship and a turning point in the plot. Theoretically, people who have been declared dead cannot be saved by the gods, but perhaps he can. However, he faces not only the revelation of his abilities, but also the responsibility for the consequences of this act. The girl realizes she can't force him, but if he's willing to try, she'll go with him, willing to bear the consequences along with him. It's the only thing she can do. They decided to sneak into the operating room, taking advantage of the moment when no one was looking to execute their plan. Acting covertly and decisively, the commissioner's son thwarted them by creating an obstacle in their path, interrupting their attempt to enter the operating room, and adding even more tension to an already difficult situation. He stood in front of them, and after saying that he had heard everything, he showed his willingness to interact further or perhaps talk about what had happened. He wondered who they were and what they intended to do with his grandmother's body. He warned them not to even think about moving on. Then he must have heard that the main character was going to go there to rescue her, which could add a new dynamic and tension to the situation. He assumed that the guy probably wasn't the killer and wanted to get in there to destroy evidence, which caused him to have doubts and prompted further investigation. At this moment, everyone present heard and saw it, adding even more tension and nervousness to the air as the situation became obvious and unpredictable. The protagonist said he would hold the guy back and the girl should go ahead, deciding to take responsibility for moving forward and solving the problems that arise. The lad emphatically warned him not to take a single step forward in his presence. Lin pleaded with them to believe, explaining that his sincere desire to save her would remain dormant if they continued to procrastinate, as their time was running out and immediate action was no longer possible. The guy remained incredulous and thought that all those words were just meaningless nonsense. He didn't believe in what was said and thought they were just empty promises or untrustworthy claims. The protagonist confidently stated that it would only take him 3 moves to defeat the guy. Despite his doubts and disbelief, he assured that he would prove by his actions that what he said was not idle chatter. He held a 10th dan in judo, a 100th dan in taekwondo, and an incredible 31st dan in jakundu, confirming his supreme level of skill in these martial arts. The protagonist, possessing incredible agility and reaction, easily dodged every attack aimed at him by the guy. His movements were precise and efficient, allowing him to avoid any danger. With agility and determination, the protagonist instantly grabbed the guy's arm, demonstrating his power and control in the situation, giving him no opportunity to resist or free himself. After that, without letting go of the boy's hand, he readied his movements, ready to demonstrate his strength and skill to the fullest. Completing the 3rd movement, the lad immediately fell to the ground, his body engulfed by an invisible force that robbed him of his strength, and he felt painfully weak, but within him smoldered a spark of hope to rise up and continue his journey. Then the main character asked, or were those exact moves? The girl begged him to give up his former pretentious image, in which he always injected himself coolly, and walked in with unshakable confidence. After that, the operating door closed and no one demanded to open it, leaving the protagonist locked inside, shrouded in unknown mysteries and anxiety about what goes on behind closed doors. The commissioner began to be explained that his mother could could not be saved as her blood had clotted and she was not showing any signs of life. It was a hard and bitter realization for the commissioner. The men stopped suddenly and looked down, deep in thought about what steps to take and how to make the decision that would prove best in the moment. The guy urged the girl to turn on the equipment and return the oxygen, asking her to also keep an eye on him for safety. Lin apologized in advance, aware that his actions or words might cause misunderstanding or trouble, and he sought to mitigate possible consequences in advance. He then applied his X-ray gaze again, scanning the situation with a particularly discerning eye for hidden details or clues that might not have been noticeable at first glance. Figuratively speaking, he ordered his medical staff to start acting immediately and without hesitation, as a point in the cycle to respond effectively to the current situation. Outside, someone was trying to break into the operating room and thundering that the girl's presence was ruining the reputation of the hospital. The son was confused and couldn't figure out what course of action they should take, so he begged his father to call the police for help and to resolve the situation. At the time, the men simply remained silent and did not utter a word, creating a tense environment, leaving the others in the dark as to his thoughts and intentions. The doctor's heart began to recover and his pulse became steady and strong, giving hope for his full recovery. The girl, concentrating, carefully stuck the needle from the jar into his body, just as he had told her, feeling his powers filter through her and channeled back into him, as if the invisible energy exchange between them was creating an exhilarating unity. Xiaofei, gazing at the guy, suddenly realized that she had actually encountered an alien being, and this moment enveloped her with a sense of incredible discovery and exhilarating amazement. He strove to awaken the Doctor of Hearts to life, to inspire him with the pulsation of unbridled passion, so that his heart would once again beat in the rhythm of sincere love and emotion, filling the world around him with genuine warmth and energy. At that moment the commissioner felt that something unfamiliar began to awaken in his soul, as if a mysterious key was activating dormant feelings and opening doors to new horizons of understanding and self-knowledge. When the girl approached him and informed him of her intention to call the police, he politely asked her to wait for a moment, remaining calm and not taking any hasty action in order to carefully weigh the situation and make the right decision. Xiaofei perked up and informed the guy that the doctor's heart had started beating again, filling them both with a sense of hope and relief, as if the moment of rebirth had shed light into the darkness of doubt and anxiety. It doesn't beat on its own. It's his heart that makes her heart beat. He needs his heart to beat glass. He repairs the wound until it can beat on its own. At this moment, the protagonist collapsed to his knees, his heart filled with emotions that he could not hold back, as if a sudden surge of feelings and thoughts made him give into the moment and surrender to the exhilarating urge. He hadn't realized that his energy would run out so quickly. Even the words were dry on his lips, and it seemed his strength wouldn't be enough to complete the treatment to the end, leaving him anxious and doubtful before the daunting task. Heart recovery was complete, but all that remained was to restore the brain cell from oxygen depletion and get her heart to start beating on its own, generating excitement and hope for success in this difficult journey of healing. His heart is already exhausted. Its beating is getting weaker, like a pregnant mother's heart, which beats weaker and weaker as it tries to maintain the necessary rhythm, struggling against fatigue and exhaustion, beginning to lose concentration. And the difficulty is that he's not sure how long it will take for the doctor's heart to start beating on its own, while every minute seems like an endless struggle with doubt and anxiety. If he lost consciousness now, all would be lost, but he was unwilling to let that happen. Every cell of his being filled with determination and fight, desperate to resist the darkness enveloping his thoughts. The girl, supporting him in every possible way, insistently told him to hold on, as if her words were a light in the darkness, giving him the strength and motivation to keep fighting despite all the difficulties and trials that beckoned them along the way. If he fails, the girl's heart will break and he will be directly connected to this difficult situation, which could affect her career and way of thinking, presenting new challenges and trials for both of them. So one must not give up. He still had only a little more time left, and each moment became more and more stressful, but he found the strength to keep fighting. Desperate to succeed, he then began to retrieve his heart again, just as he had done once before, inwardly filling with determination and focus, preparing for the next stage of the challenge. The protagonist felt unbearable pain at this point, but in spite of this he continued to act, focusing on his goal and persevering to heal despite all the difficulties he had to overcome. He needed to hold on to save the doctor, and that became his primary mission, supporting him while fighting the painful sensations and temptations that tried to consume him. Those present realized that the other tree the scope was aimed at was locked and they would not be able to enter it, creating a new obstacle in their path and causing a sense of anxiety and uncertainty. The guy was feeling mixed feelings and couldn't figure out what to do. His grandmother had just died and he had no idea what those two were doing there, creating internal conflict and a sense of unease. But the men felt that he trusted these two, despite his doubts and the difficulties he was experiencing, as if an inner voice was telling him that they were on the right path. At this point he began to slowly approach the operating room, his heart beating faster, filling his body with determination and excitement before the unpredictability and challenge of this moment. The lad admitted that he wouldn't be able to hold out much longer, feeling fear that they were powerless in this situation and regretting getting involved in this unpleasant pile of events that threatened his very existence. As it turned out, the man's name was Zhou Tinho and the woman who was lying there was a mom named Li Wenyu. This is the information that was able to be ascertained, and it helped identify the two people. Not knowing what the hell the youths there are up to, he still trusts them, hoping they will take his words to heart. Like a son caring for his mother, he is willing to help them in any way he can if it will make any difference. The girl asked the guy for some kind of answer to a question that came up, implying that he had some information or solution that could help them in their current situation. The protagonist stated that he needed this man and asked the girl to let only him in, believing that he could help them in their difficult situation. Eventually, a man entered the room, deciding to support the hero and the girl in their difficult situation. When the man entered the operating room, he immediately began asking if there was any hope for his mother, expressing deep concern and eagerness to learn about the condition of the woman who lay before them. There are clothes, but the pulse is stable, so that if a man could lend his heart, he could cut down on the expense of time, which would increase the chances of success in saving and prolonging the mother's life. The man instantly realized the situation and, without wasting time, began to undress, ready to provide his heart in an attempt to save the life of the protagonist's mother. The protagonist warned that the whole process will be very painful and the man must be prepared to make the decision with full awareness and willingness to endure all the difficulties. But could it get any more painful than when his mother gave birth to him? As soon as he heard the man's agreement, he made the decision to act, focusing on his task and preparing for an operation that could change the fate of everyone present. And the first heartbeat was given to him by his mother, as if symbolizing the endless love and sacrifice of his mother's heart, which continued to beat inside him, filling him with new hope and strength. Now, as a son, he has the opportunity to make his mother's heart beat inside his own body as a symbol of the faith, hope and love that will always be with him, reminding him of the strong bond between him and his parent. Their hearts with their mother really began to beat in the same rhythm, as if a melody of unity and harmony filled them both, creating a sense of closeness and connection that overcame all obstacles and challenges. As the main character said, it was unbearable pain throughout the whole process. Every moment was a test of his stamina and determination, but he kept fighting, putting all his strength into trying to save his mother. The boy could understand why only his dad was allowed to see his grandmother's body, since he was also a relative, realizing that it might have been due to some family traditions or protocols he couldn't fathom. And then he suddenly noticed that the door was open, and came to the assumption that perhaps others could not enter the room because of this. They instantly entered the room together, supporting each other in this difficult moment, as if unity and solidarity gave them the strength to overcome any obstacle. At this point, the man sat right next to the mother, holding her hand as if wanting to be close to her and convey his support and love during this difficult period. His presence and physical contact can be felt by the mother as a source of strength and reassurance. The boy was crying, saying that his grandmother died a horrible death, expressing his deep pain and grief over the loss, as if his emotions overwhelmed him, not letting his grief subside. His tears and sadness are a natural reaction to the loss of a loved one and the tragic circumstances of her death. At this point, the mother informed her son that his son was late, bringing a new surge of anxiety and worry into their already tense environment. The son was probably already emotionally vulnerable and worried about losing his grandmother. The doctor, who was not resuscitated for several hours, was pronounced dead, bringing even more sadness and heaviness to an already heavy atmosphere. An additional loss and bereavement for all present, especially if the doctor was a respected and dear person. She now lies alive and well, as if to underscore the amazing healing that has taken place, and bringing joy and relief to all who were concerned about her health. This is incredibly auspicious news, especially given the previous troubling circumstances. The doctor could not understand who had done it, and assumed it was that youngster, evincing mixed feelings of amazement and indignation at the secret and unexpected saving action. He decided to find out who was really in front of him and why the main character had such extraordinary strength and determination, piquing his interest and desire to solve this mystery. Early in the morning, Xiaofei nursed her boyfriend back to health, expressing her care and support at this difficult moment, as if trying to ease his suffering and help him recover from the past events. She put him on IVs and nursed him back to health, providing the necessary treatment and care to help him recover and get back to a full life after all his ordeal. After the girl finished, she began to leave the room, leaving the guy alone with his thoughts and feelings, as if the time for self-reflection and inner healing had arrived. Immediately afterward, she suddenly lit up and reported that it seemed she had not been fired, as if this sudden discovery brought her joy and relief before an unknown future. He scared the girl to death with his unexpected behavior, and she was very much worried, as if his actions caused her deep fear and anxiety, not letting her calm down. Her heart beat faster, and every thought was filled with anxious premonitions. She worried about the consequences of this terrible moment. Dr. Lee was fine and he just needed time to recover. She believed that everything would be fine. As if those words brought her comfort and hope for the future, she clung to that certainty that things would soon get better and their lives would be peaceful and joyful again. The guy appreciated and cherished the girl for everything she did, realizing her importance and support in difficult moments. Her presence for him was invaluable and valuable, as if she was his support and reliable backbone in all life situations. Xiaofei was interested in what else the guy wanted to tell her, feeling inwardly excited and curious about possible conversations that could reveal new truths or feelings. Her heart beat faster at the thought of what he could tell her and she longed to expand her understanding of his thoughts and emotions. He admitted that she looked great in that outfit, expressing his admiration and respect for her style and appearance. This compliment filled her heart with warmth. She felt valued and beautiful in his eyes, which added confidence to her appearance and well-being. The protagonist couldn't understand why she was so shy. After all, he was just talking about his feelings openly, as if he didn't see anything shameful or awkward about it. It seemed to him that honest expression of emotions was natural and welcomed, and he strived to help her overcome her inner barriers so that she too could open up and be sincere. Then she suddenly kissed him, stunning him with the unexpected display of feelings. Emotions surged between them, resolving recent misunderstandings and bringing them closer to each other. This moment was a turning point in their relationship and they both felt the closeness and understanding grow stronger. Lin was momentarily confused and asked what she was doing, feeling mixed feelings of amazement and incomprehension before the unexpected display of her emotions. His heart beat faster. He felt seized by the sudden passion, but at the same time felt some insecurity before this unexpected situation. The girl herself didn't realize what had happened. She just couldn't contain herself. Then she said it wasn't what he thought, leaving room for further explanation and conversation. This misunderstanding created a sense of misunderstanding and they both felt the need to clarify their feelings and intentions to each other. Then someone walked in and announced that sexually harassing a patient while on duty was unacceptable and would be penalized, causing mixed feelings in everyone present. They spent the whole night waiting for the guy to wake up and then asked the girl to go around the other wards. It turned out to be the principal, causing them embarrassment and surprise. This unexpected turn of events left them stunned and a little embarrassed in front of the principal they didn't realize they had. It was a good thing it was only a fainting spell, because if he had been in serious trouble, they would have all been in utter helplessness and despair. As if kneeling before the unknown, she was badly injured, with her heart punctured and bleeding. Her brain lacked oxygen and its condition was critical. In fact, she was already dead, a fact they had to announce in person, causing them deep anxiety and sadness. They came to thank the guy on behalf of the hospital, because after all, it was thanks to him that they were able to save the life of one of the most famous doctors. Having people like him who are willing to help others is the best example for all medical staff. The protagonist remarked that they are very kind, and that deserves thanks, because after all, they are true professionals. The men felt that he shouldn't be so humble, no matter what methods he used, as long as they actually helped save people, because that was a value that shouldn't be underestimated. To tell the truth, they came here for personal reasons. Considering that in the future there might be such an extreme situation again, they sincerely hope for this person's help. In their country, the process of training a quality doctor is not so easy. It requires time, resources and serious effort. The protagonist, of course, understood everything, but he always wondered if they knew how he saved people too. His activity sometimes went unnoticed and he longed for people to know about his efforts and contribution to saving others. There was a camera in the operating room and of course everyone saw what was going on. The men even wondered if he could treat all the patients in the hospital. After all, it would seem they should have just fired him. Well, don't let him worry. He's not the only one who saw it. The commissioner also instructed them to keep his abilities a secret. Not going to press him to save lives. He's entitled to use his abilities however he wants. Well, there is a patient in the hospital right now who has been scheduled for emergency treatment. He has multiple organ failure due to obesity and frankly the medical staff is doing the best they can. His rich son has expressed his willingness to donate 50 million if they cure his father. The guy thought about how much high-tech medical equipment they could purchase with that amount and how many other patients they could save. The protagonist realized that after everything that happened, he can't just ignore it. Everything that happened left a deep mark in his heart and mind, making him realize the need to take action or make some decisions. In the other ward at this time, the son and father were quarreling. The son asking his father to stop shouting, for he had put in the work to look after him here, and now his father had been tormenting him at night for days. They listened attentively to the son and father, trying to find ways to resolve the conflict and alleviate the suffering of both parties. The protagonist feeling that despite his personal affairs, he could not leave them in distress. A man begged to cure his father, claiming that if he died, his ghost would torment him to death. He offered to cure his father and donate another 20 million. It was Mr. Lu who was lying there. The man, Mr. Lu's father, Mr. Lu was indeed an excellent son, but he was devoted to his father, the old man, despite his complicated character. In addition, the physical pain was considerable, and the gentleman had also suffered enough. The doctor reassured the man, telling him not to worry as the guy was the only one who could cure his father. This statement filled him with hope and confidence in his future treatment, and he looked at the young specialist gratefully. Realizing how important his help was, Lin waved his hand, urging them to begin the treatment process that could change their lives. In that gesture was the hope of healing and relief of suffering bestowed by wisdom and strength. His determination was clear, and his every gesture filled them all with hope and faith in the successful outcome of the treatment. The old man should have consumed more food and water to sustain himself, but instead he passed on. It caused his body to weaken. Perhaps extracting the excess energy would help take some of the strain off his body. It's also a good way for him to make up for what he lost. So it's a win-win situation. He couldn't understand what was happening, for the energy centered inside the man was very fierce. It was like a lake stored for years finding a crack that began to burst out like crazy. The old man started showing unusual symptoms, which caused alarm. His loved ones noticed changes in his condition and behavior, and it made them concerned about his health and well-being. The old man, on the contrary, began to visibly lose weight. He couldn't understand why the old man was losing weight so rapidly. He intended to give him all the support he could, but the situation was becoming too tense and disturbing. Lu heard the screams and anxiously approached the doctor, wanting to know if something serious was going on, concern for his father's well-being in his voice. At this point, the protagonist left the chamber as he had done everything necessary. He felt satisfied with the work he had completed, but also a little sad as he realized he was leaving an important moment. He carried the door out with one powerful movement, showing his strength and determination. The gesture was symbolic, reflecting his determination and readiness for action. Lin apologized, for he had mistakenly believed that the doors opened outward, but as he stepped outside he realized that the door opened inward, and in that instant he was overcome with a sense of embarrassment and the ridiculousness of his actions. He reported that the kid was still inside and needed to go outside to cool down a bit, because it was getting too stuffy indoors and he felt he needed fresh air for clarity of thought. Lu ran in and started asking how his father was, not knowing that he wasn't dead after all. There was anxiety and worry in his voice, and he waited impatiently for an answer to calm his nerves. He was deeply surprised at what he saw before him. The picture or situation before him struck him to the core, evoking mixed feelings of amazement and incomprehension. The man couldn't understand why he felt lighter and didn't feel pain everywhere, until he realized that he had finally been freed from the weight of the grief thoughts and tension that had been weighing on him, and this release brought him incredible relief and peace. The protagonist did not know what had become of him. He felt a mixture of incomprehension and anxiety, trying to unravel the strange changes in his well-being and perception of the world around him, which made him feel like being drawn into a mysterious vortex of events. And besides, epidermal cells are gradually transformed into material for clothing, which adds to the mystery of this process and makes you wonder about the mysterious nature of the transformation taking place with the main character's body. He thought it was the reincarnation of a saint. Perhaps after this the doctor, transformed into a stork, began to doubt the rightness of his choice of religion, for what had happened was incomprehensible to him and caused a shock to his creed. 2 days ago he had been a sickly man wandering along the river without the wishes of his childhood. Now he not only had a new lease on life, but also incredible abilities that opened before him like a gift from fate, and he felt delight and amazement at his new reality. Living is awesome, he thought, absorbing the moment and realizing that even in the most ordinary moments of life there was something amazing and beautiful hidden. And in that realization he found true happiness. He wondered how to redefine life and what to do, not knowing what he wanted. Pondered the possibility of living the rest of his days without worries or choosing a different path. He found it difficult to make a decision, but the inner search and desire for change remained the main directions. He decided not to stay still and move on. While Xiaofei finished her work, he intended to fulfill his promise to his uncle and take her home, showing his loyalty and determination. This guy noticed that someone approached him with a request or question. He stopped to listen to that person, ready to help or answer their questions, showing consideration and benevolence. Some guy and a girl came up to him. The guy asked him if he was the Hong Hong the girl had told him about, and there was some puzzlement in his eyes as he tried to remember who Hong Hong was and why he was being asked about it. The surprised protagonist immediately recognized her and rejoiced, as meeting her was an unexpected but pleasant surprise that rekindled warm feelings in his heart. He started asking her why she came, expressing his concern and noticing that she looked terrible. He asked her to let him look at her, but the guy was against it and interfered in the conversation. Lin apologized, realizing that his words were rude, and tried to soften the atmosphere after the awkward statement. He strove to correct his mistake and bring back the friendly and warm atmosphere. The girl was surprised, for the guy had told her he was already at a late stage, and she couldn't understand why he now looked like a different person than she had expected. The guy next to her was named Kuan Shao, and she asked him not to be angry anymore, since she was no longer speaking, hinting at the changes that had occurred in her life that might have affected their communication. For some reason, he thought he was adding with other men and suddenly yelled at her, expressing his incomprehension and possibly resentment over the situation. The protagonist could not understand why he had become so rude and decided to admonish him, expressing his concern about the change in his behavior and hoping to restore the previous relationship. But the girl said it was no big deal and he shouldn't get into it, trying to comfort him and ease the tension that had arisen from their conflict. And then he grabbed her hair and asked her how this behavior was acceptable to her, showing his rage and displeasure at her reaction to what had happened. The protagonist instantly became enraged after such an action because this crime against her personal integrity caused him to erupt in anger and resentment. The guy asked if he still thought she was his woman. The girl told him they had been together for over a year and hadn't even kissed, and he knew she was pregnant with his child while she was with him, but he had just gotten rid of it. If she wants to be with him and suffer for him, he should treat her better. How can he be so rude to her? The protagonist wondered, realizing that treating her tenderly and caringly is certainly more appropriate behavior. It's funny that he can't even let her get her a branded bag when he could be so nice to her here. For he has nothing at all and all his promises turn out to be a sham. The guy said that if someone saw him in the hospital and told it would cause problems. He would lose his dignity if he socialized with people like that, and it's unacceptable. The girl used to feel sorry for the guy but saw no future with him, and she hopes he understands that. She realized that sympathy doesn't always lead to a healthy relationship and happiness for both. Lin was easily upset at this moment. Feeling his hopes and expectations shattered, he wallowed in a sense of loss and disappointment, realizing that his feelings were not mutual. The guy was furious the whole time when the protagonist dared to contradict him, especially considering his financial situation. In his eyes, the guy seemed untenable, and the guy thought that people like the protagonist didn't deserve respect. Xiaofei then approached him and informed him that she had finished her shift, offering to drive home together, creating a moment of calm and a chance to take his mind off the tense situation. She wondered why he looked so upset, and she assumed it was because she had kept him waiting a long time, causing some guilt and regret for her behavior. The guy instantly recognized the girl and started asking if it was really her. Feeling excited and hoping for confirmation of his assumptions, he recognized her instantly and, noticing that she seemed to have forgotten him, remembered that they had gone to the same school and also realized that she worked at his dad's jade and jewelry store nearby, suggesting that they have lunch together to rekindle old memories. Xiaofei said that she already had an appointment, but she still couldn't understand who he was, causing him some frustration and a sense of misunderstanding. This moment made him think about his feelings and relationship. The guy was surprised that the appointment had been made with him, given his terminal illness and imminent death, and didn't let himself be fooled into realizing the gravity of the situation. Xiaofei came angrily and informed the guy of his terminal illness, considering it unacceptable to distinguish between rich and poor in such matters. Expressing her fury and concern, he was sure he knew more about men than she did and decided he had to protect her. If he didn't do something now, he would call the police later and they would pick her up. He decided to shut him down for 3 days, as usual, to see if he would stay this good, hinting at possible punishments and evaluations of his behavior. But the protagonist had done nothing wrong, and he didn't understand why they wanted to arrest him, resenting the unfairness of the situation and questioning the legality of the actions against him. But does he need a reason to arrest him? He's not even afraid to say that Captain Joe and the police are his father's best friends, and if he sees someone hurting him, he'll catch him for him. Just then, the son appeared and said that if they took the boy away, they would have no one to thank, emphasizing the importance of his presence and the significance of his relationship with others. The protagonist again said that there was no need for gratitude, as he just did what he had to do, emphasizing his simplicity and straightforwardness in his actions. But the men finally convinced his mother to retire, all thanks to the guy, noting his impact on making a difference and recognizing his important contributions. The guy admits to the protagonist that he is his older brother, whom he inadvertently fellated last night. He expressed a desire for a lesson or advice from his brother, seeking instruction or direction from him. The guy couldn't understand the situation. After all, he is also his son, so why are they being so nice to the main character? He thought the girl said he was an orphan, and apparently the girl lied to him. Xiaofei started complaining to the men that the guy said he would send someone to arrest Lin for 3 days, and it didn't seem to be the first time, bringing up previous incidents and the consequences of their actions. The commissioner said he would certainly look into it. He never condones malfeasance in office, emphasizing his dislike of abuse of power and promising to take action against Lin. The boy could not realize who stood before him, though he was very familiar with him. Feeling confused and bewildered by the unexpected turn of events, he now recalls that every time his brother went to catch prostitutes, he was there for them. Realizing realizing the true nature of past events and their impact on his memories. It's time for the men to head back to the station, as there's been a lot of activity there lately, and there's no limit to his gratitude. He thanked the guy again, expressing his appreciation for his help and cooperation. They saw what he has yesterday, and it's not like they're going to take away any of his research, indicating that he's in no danger of losing his data or the results of his work. As long as he is a law-abiding citizen of this country and is not doing anything illegal, no one is going to arrest him for no reason. Emphasizing the importance of obeying the law and protecting his rights, they then said their goodbyes and went their separate ways, finishing the meeting and continuing their business, each leaving with their own thoughts and tasks. Hoping for the best in the future, Xiaofei offered the guy breakfast, creating a nice atmosphere and a chance to spend time together after the conversation. It was a nice ending to the meeting where they could enjoy each other's company. She pulled his hand and said she wanted to show him something, making him curious and wanting to know what that something was. Her actions caught his attention and added intrigue to their meeting. The guy was furious after realizing that he couldn't even win a woman while some poor guy was able to do it. He underestimated him and wondered how he was able to get to the commissioner, who is the guy's son. As expected, he was confident in his understanding of women and his experience in relationships with the opposite sex. These experiences helped him to better understand and interact with women. But if some people choose to be deceived, there's little you can do about it. Even the best intentions won't help change their desire to be insincere or rigid. The boy turned around sharply, trying to determine who had attacked him and preparing to defend himself against a possible threat. His sudden reaction reflecting alertness and readiness to respond to any potential risk or danger. He erupted in rage as he couldn't understand who could have made such a hit. The feeling of confusion and anger over the sudden attack made him react with rage and bewilderment. Then he once again felt a blow directly to his back, causing him pain and resentment due to the continued attack. This unexpected blow intensified his feelings of pain and annoyance. His rage knew no limit, for he could not understand who was making these attacks and why. He had mixed feelings of helplessness and anger, not understanding the reason for such aggression. He said the asshole should come out and fight fair, promising to knock all his teeth out, and his words sounded like thunder in the silence, echoing in the ears of all who were within earshot, and his determination was reflected in the fire of his eyes, indicating his readiness to fight to his last breath. Strangely enough, the protagonist did not believe in his words. They seemed empty sounds carrying only emptiness. His skepticism was a wall against trust, as if he had been hardened in the fire of betrayal. The girl immediately rushed to the guy, as if a magnet of attraction led her straight to him. Her heart was beating so hard that it seemed to jump out of her chest. She could not contain her feelings. She asked the guy if he was crazy and why he was doing it. Her voice sounded wary, but there was also a note of concern in it, as if she was trying to understand his actions and make some sense of them. Lin reported that he had a nasty mouth and demanded that he apologize to Xiaofei. His words sounded like a whiplash, and fury flashed in his eyes, as if he was ready to tear everything apart over this offense. The girl was dumbfounded when it turned out that the guy was not only rude, but also cruel. She could not imagine that he was capable of such actions, and realized that she was wrong in her judgments about him. The guy also thought that Mr. Lin was not only uneducated but also a mad dog. He wondered if he had broken some law but concluded that he was just a damn loser whose actions only caused disgust and annoyance. It's not his business to say such things. He has no right to rape others, and don't let him think that just because he reports his son to the commissioner, he can take a beating with other people. Xiaofei begged him not to go, but the guy just didn't listen to her, as if his ears just didn't care about her words, and his determination went against her anxiety and worry. The guy ordered him to clean it up and threatened that it wouldn't just stay that way. He wouldn't put up with such a jerk, and was willing to do something to vent his hatred in secret, rejecting the thought of confronting him in person. The girl explained that the guy has a grandmother who died many years ago, and so he visits her grave to show how powerful he is, and in his actions he tends to emphasize his strength and power. Of course, after that, the lad's rage went over the edge of the sphere, his anger splashing out like waves in a stormy sea, making those around him feel the weight of his anger and foreshadowing something more severe. He immediately began to utilize the transformation of his hand, his fingers bending and curving as if he had mastered the power to turn his ordinary limb into an instrument of destruction, and his eyes flashed with a greedy flame full of determination and retribution. Xiaofei watched fearfully, for she didn't know what the guy was going to do. Her heart beat faster when she saw his readiness for action, and she prayed that it wouldn't end badly. The fellow seemed to notice that he had just promised to be a law-abiding citizen before the commissioner, and expressed his readiness to face him, challenging him to a confrontation without hesitation. Unlike the guy, the commissioner has many ways to deal with him that are not illegal. His power and resources give him ample opportunity for actions that can affect the situation. That's when someone grabbed the guy right by the ear. as if holding him accountable for his words and actions. And his face contorted with pain and surprise as he felt this unexpected grip, and, feeling furious and indignant, he began to beat some men, as if he was venting all his indignation on him. His blows were full of rage and force, as if he was trying to inflict maximum damage on his opponent. There was no limit to his rage. It pounded like an ocean enraged by a storm, his anger exploding into furious blows bringing destruction and chaos, and his inner flame burned brighter than any flame, causing him to lose control. As it turned out, it was the boy's father. His face contorted with a painful mixture of surprise, pain and bitterness as he realized that his son was the object of his fury, and something flashed in his eyes that words cannot describe. His father had promised he would kill him and called him a son of a bitch, his voice sounding like a thunderclap that filled the air with anger and determination, as if he was ready to carry out his threat to the end, no matter what. The son realized his mistake and realized that he was wrong and began to apologize to his father. His words sounded sincere and pleading. His eyes were full of remorse, and he sought to correct his actions to him. The father told his son to kneel, as if every moment of his posture was a reminder of his mistake, that dripped on his brain like drops of boiling water waiting for their time to erupt in a furious outburst. The man apologized to Mr. Liu for the delay, but the men said it was fine, because the time flew by quickly and he didn't even have time to get bored. He had a curious son who wondered what his father was going to do to his brother that would not be illegal, his mind wondering what alternative ways there might be. The protagonist instantly recognized the men, his face expressing surprise and excitement as he realized that a person of significant importance in his life or current situation was standing before him. His father insisted that his son not associate with strangers, his words sounding stern and cautionary, reminding him of the possible dangers that could lurk outside of familiar circles. Liu asked how the investigations into private thefts from jewelry stores in his area were going, giving him plenty of time to find out. He warned that if he didn't get an answer, the store would have to be turned over to someone else. The men tried to investigate the situation. The police had been here dozens of times, but even they had no idea what was going on. He had security supporting the store 24 hours a day, and yet he was being ripped off on a regular basis. He gave it 2 more days, hoping for results. If there was no progress after 2 days, he decided he would have to close up store. The father bowed before his boss and informed him that they, along with his son, were now leaving. The girl turned to her boyfriend, her voice sounding strained, as if she was full of excitement or anxiety, ready to speak her thoughts or requests. His father asked him to stop acting like a child, for he had repeatedly told him to cut ties with this country girl, and wondered why she was still here. Let her take that money, and they're even. Never to go near his son again. The father stated this with such severity, as if his words were a law that could not be broken. Now they were finally starting to leave. Their movements were decisive, as if they were leaving all the past behind and heading for a new beginning, full of uncertainty but also hope for the best. Now the girl was left behind, but with a pile of money, its value becoming a symbol of her new beginning. She felt mixed emotions, joy at the possibilities it offered and sadness at the departure of those she loved. All those present immediately began to discuss this incident. Their conversations were filled with excitement and bewilderment. Everyone was trying to understand what had happened and how it would affect their future lives. The girl didn't know she was upset now. Her feelings remained hidden behind a mask of calm, and only inside she was experiencing a complex mixture of emotions that she couldn't express to everyone around her. And then she, literally, began to fall, her body succumbing to the oppressive effects of her emotions, and she literally lost her footing, sinking into an abyss of pain and frustration. The protagonist instantly ran over to help her. His reaction was quick and decisive. He sought to support her and protect her from falling, as if he was ready to take on all her pain. She said the guy was probably learning to make fun of her. Her words sounded full of frustration and resentment. She felt hurt and alone, as if she had become the target of ridicule and mockery. He wanted to laugh, but then he remembered she had a board. He was still an old virgin, and he wasn't in the mood for laughter right now. He was full of fucking optimism as always, and it was no wonder that even the disease couldn't defeat him. His perseverance and willpower was amazing, sustaining him even in the most difficult of situations. The protagonist assumed he had a stomach ache and asked permission to help her. His care and attention focused on her well-being despite his own troubles. The girl didn't want help and told him not to touch her, her voice sounding determined, as if she was determined to handle the problem on her own, not wanting interference. It's over between them. She doesn't want to owe him anything, but recognizes that they deserve those consequences. Xiaofei stood in the girl's way. Her presence was like a barrier separating her from further movement, and both compassion and determination could be read in her eyes, and she looked at her with a look full of regret, as if realizing the gravity of the situation and realizing that these were the inevitable consequences of their actions. But then things did move on, as if despite the complicated emotions and experiences, life continued its course and they were both compelled to move forward no matter what. At last she only told him not to let down a girl who was willing to give him a chance and left it at that. She admired her, recognizing that she herself would not have been able to stand in such a situation. Lu approached the guy and said the past should stay in the past. He thinks this young lady is addressing him nicely and asked why the guy can't see that. He helped him a lot and now let him call him brother. Now they will be brothers. The men handed him a card with 5 million, and though he could spend it, he warned him not to let it cloud his mind. He feels he just put in a little effort, and if he's getting that much money, it's not fair to the doctors who work days and nights to save patients. So let him think of it as another charitable contribution to the hospital and the patients who really need the money. He can't even refute the reasons he put forward. This man really doesn't like money. The men realized the guy was sincere and believed what he was saying. The guy, realizing he couldn't leave anything else behind, asked to take this stone as a token of appreciation. It was an item he had traded from an antique dealer. It seemed to be something like a people's lunch from the sky, and he could not accurately determine its value. A very familiar feeling swept over the boy when he saw this stone, as if he had encountered it before and its presence was causing him a sense of déjà vu. He decided to take this stone, in case there were others like it. He wished to acquire them. This stone evoked special feelings in him that he wanted to keep. He gladly accepted the lad as his friend, and now, after discharging the old man from the hospital, he is coming home. As they walked along the road, the girl persisted in repeating that the main character was a complete hypocrite hiding his true nature behind a mask, and she did not believe in his sincerity and kindness that he was trying to demonstrate. Let him reflect on his house he lives in. 5 million could buy him a villa, but instead he donated more money and tries to act like money is dirt to him. The protagonist realized she was right and decided to return the money by stopping donating to the hospital. However, she doesn't realize that if he took the money this time, he wouldn't be able to refuse in the future when he asks him for something else. So he had to tell her that the money doesn't interest him, but he can take this stone, and the next time he asks him for something, he will be forced to bring another such stone. The girl recalled that the men had said they were foreign objects, and of course he couldn't have many of them. It looks like someone is willing to pay to save a life, so he has to ask her for 1 million again for saving her brother and father. The girl pointed out that he had no right to demand such large sums of money from her and that he should look for other ways to save the lives of her brother and father. Then let her just go and buy him some buns and he won't charge her for them. The protagonist started waiting for the girl while his cat sauntered off to get some buns. While he waited for the girl, he revisited pictures with his ex. Remembering past moments and the feelings they shared surfaced in his heart, leaving many questions and memories. Despite his frustrated state, his face was still adorned with a smile that testified to his ability to find joy and optimism even in difficult moments. Lin couldn't hold back a tear during this moment, showing his emotionality and involvement in the situation. Eventually, he realized that he couldn't afford to show weakness, so he wiped away his tears and took action again. He lifted his head up to take his mind off his surroundings and focus on his thoughts. He was thinking about something important, going over different ideas and options in his head, trying to find answers to his questions and make the right decision. And then he finally decided to delete the photo completely. He realized that remembering the ex-girlfriend was hurting him and preventing him from moving forward. Boldly and decisively he clicked the delete button and freed himself from past ties. Opening a new chapter of his life, he decisively deleted the photo, stashed his phone in his pocket and boldly moved forward, leaving the past behind and preparing to take on life's new challenges. Just at this very moment, as he moved forward with determination, his girlfriend appeared with buns in hand, smiling and happy to announce her purchase. Well, someone got in her way and knocked her down. As it turned out, it was some girl and she apologized to her and said she ran too fast. The protagonist, feeling somewhat suspicious or anxious, asked the girl who accidentally hit his friend to voluntarily check her bag to make sure nothing valuable or important had been stolen or damaged in the collision. Xiaofei was perplexed as to why she even needed to check her bag. After all, nothing strange or suspicious had happened, and she didn't understand the reason for such a request. The stranger suddenly disappeared, leaving them bewildered and confused, offering no explanation or opportunity to understand why she had done so. They realized that the reason for the stranger's flight was the theft of her wallet, which contained all her documents and the money she had struggled to earn. The protagonist approached the stranger, trying to calm her down and express his support, saying that together they would find a way to solve the problem and help recover the stolen documents and money. He asked her not to worry because the stranger wasn't going anywhere. It was time to let go of the past and face the new life with joy. The special abilities had never been used for anything other than saving a life, and now he had plenty of energy. Thus, today he was determined to make peace with speed to deal with this thief and recover the stolen goods. At the most decisive moment, he unexpectedly tripped over a wall, causing him a bit of daze and embarrassment. But he didn't give up and decided to continue his journey, overcoming the obstacles in his way. And naturally, instantly he fell down because of it, feeling pain and discomfort, but not losing his determination and strength to get up again and continue his way forward. The girl kept running away after stealing her wallet, leaving his hero in a state of frustration and anxiety. But he did not give up and and pursued her with determination, intent on recovering her stolen items and bringing her before the face of justice. Sensing the growing danger, she realized that she needed to speed up her run and do her best to escape. After learning that she had the money, they realized that they didn't have to get it back and realized that the most important thing was to stay safe and stop pursuing her to avoid further trouble. Besides, she knows these alleys better than anyone else. Like her own 5 fingers, the police will not catch her, because she skillfully hides in the shadows, disguised as an ordinary passerby, so that usually a person definitely goes unnoticed. Well, just this moment in front of me, like a painting, but suddenly saw the main character. In his eyes flickered something unknown, like a mystery waiting to be solved. He landed professionally right in front of her, like an acrobat in a circus arena, his movements precise and graceful, evoking some vague sense of respect and anxiety in her. His appearance was indeed effective and pathos, like a majestic moment from a movie where his every move filled the space with importance and grandeur. He turned to the girl and saw her face, a mixture of amazement and recognition reflected on her features, as if she saw him as more than just a stranger on the street. She could not understand how the protagonist could catch up with her, for she was sure she had remained unnoticed in this crowded world, as if he had read her mind and followed her at every turn. Of course, then the guy asked her to give him the wallet, his voice sounding calm but with a certain insistence in it, as if he knew it was necessary right now. She started playing dumb and said he must be mistaken. After all, she was an upstanding citizen, so he may have mistaken her for someone else. She even threatened to sue him for slandering a good person, should he tell her what part of her body she was hiding his wallet in before she admitted it, or leave her in uncertainty, pondering how he knew. After he said she had special abilities, she became interested and questioned what he meant, her eyes sparkling with curiosity as if a new world of possibilities had opened up before her. She suggested that he might be one of those sultans who liked to brag about his amazing powers and seemed to want to argue with her about it. So she raised her eyebrows and wondered with a smirk if he could guess where she had hidden his wallet. The wallet she had just stolen was hidden under the armpit of her left arm, and she also had wallets hidden somewhere in her pants and, of course, her shoes, respectively. The girl was surprised at how he knew such details, for if he had just been guessing, he wouldn't have been able to describe so accurately where she had hidden the wallet. If she stands still, he'll be able to get a better look at her, the girl thought, watching him study her movements with curiosity. It was a very good location, she decided, standing on a street corner from where she could see both ways, as if she were planning her next move in this unexpected game, and she believed him to be a supernatural being. If she wasn't mistaken, maybe some sort of X-ray, she thought, marveling at his ability to see through the surface of things. She recognized that she had lost and decided to pay him back. Her pride was strong, but her reasoning told her that it was the most sensible way out of the situation. And then, pulling out her wallet, the girl handed it to the guy. Her gesture was simple and momentary, but it felt like a sincere admission of defeat. She admitted defeat and handed him back his wallet as promised, relieved of the burden of guilt, handing it over with determination. Her gesture felt like a sincere admission of defeat and a final decision. The protagonist said she was a person of her word and thanked her. His words were sincere, reflecting gratitude for her honesty and fairness in their difficult confrontation. Well, right at that moment the wallet literally hovered in the air in front of the guy, as if time was freezing to emphasize the importance of this gesture and the moment of their meeting. Lin could understand that this happened and why the wallet abruptly hovered. He felt that there was some mysterious element hidden in this moment that caught his attention. He could assume that she was in some way unusual, for the wallet moment looked too strange to be a simple case. The fact that she also had superpowers could explain the strange moment with the wallet. Lin thought about it, realizing that the world around him was full of mysteries and riddles. Then he saw some threads right in front of him. Their flicker was barely perceptible, but it caught his attention, as if a thread of fate was trying to connect him to something unknown. And in a split second those threads tied him up. He felt a whirlwind of events begin to pull him into the unknown, as if fate had taken him under its wing. The protagonist continued to believe it was hair. The threads seemed to him to be some natural phenomenon, paying little attention to their mysterious nature. He was right. The other day she had become possessed by an alien spirit and after that had gained the ability to control her hair. It explained the strange strands he had seen. Under the cover of the wall of light he didn't even notice how many strands of hair were hiding around him. They could stretch and fly at her will, perfect for hiding in clothes and stealing unnoticed. Under the cover of the wall of light he didn't even notice how many strands of hair were lurking around him. They could stretch and fly at her will, perfect for hiding in clothes and stealing unnoticed, as well as becoming strong if need be. They could also be used to kill, a perfect weapon that left almost no trace and usually didn't raise suspicion. It was a secret power she wielded. He's only here to get back what she stole from him. She doesn't have to kill him. Could she tone down her aggression a bit and allow herself to find another way out of this situation? The girl said he was still lucky she wasn't charging him, and with a glance at him, added that he still wanted his money back. She was genuinely happy that she was able to meet someone, since the chances of that were so slim, but his cruelty was repulsive and she wouldn't pay him back. Don't let him worry. She wasn't going to kill him yet, but just in case, she would do something to restore him. the girl decided it was better to knock the guy out to avoid further conflicts and problems, because it seemed like the safest option in their strange situation. Most importantly, he was sure it could kill the man, and she didn't want to cause him serious harm, but was still determined to act for his own protection. Let him worry, she'll estimate the weight of the pot, control the force and drop it on his head. It will make him pass out on the spot but won't hurt his head much, so he can take it easy. She started this argument herself. Now not only does she recant, but she doesn't want to hurt people. Realizing the importance of morals in a situation like this, immediately afterward, the guy was hit in the head with a pot. The blow was severe, and he passed out on the spot, reacting to the unexpected attack. Strangely enough, he instantly shattered and the ground was left on his head, as if his body had become something unreal, causing surprise and anxiety. The girl read to 3, hoping the guy would fall, waiting for a reaction to her unusual blow, based on the hope of ending the strange incident. But surprisingly nothing happened, and the guy continued to stand still, showing no sign of being affected by the pot hit. The girl couldn't understand why the guy was still on his feet and didn't faint after such a blow, causing her bewilderment and concern, and she wanted to tear him apart at lightning speed, but she also saw that he wasn't moving from his spot, which confused her and made her reconsider her plans. The protagonist then transformed his arm. His movements became fluid and spectacular, as if he was summoning magic for his defense, and strangely enough, he immediately tore her hair. His action seemed like some incredible action. She was left in amazement at his strength. The girl was surprised that the guy was capable of such actions. His strength and abilities made her admire and worry at the same time. He was going to talk to her calmly, but it didn't seem to work because her expression remained disgruntled and wary. How is it possible? Does she not only have the ability to see through, but also some other more mystical abilities? He wondered, feeling puzzled by her strange actions. She seems to be good at math, just hitting the right spot or something. He reflected, trying to figure out how she could guess so accurately. Then the protagonist, feeling an inner urge to explore, made the decision to stop and look at a piece of wall that seemed mysterious and attractive to him. Well, as it turned out, behind this piece of wall was not just a block of stone, but a living person who suddenly appeared in front of the protagonist, waiting to be discovered. She's able to warn him of the possible consequences that could arise if he decides to throw that piece of wall directly in her direction. Fortunately, the girl was able to dodge the intended attack thanks to her agility and reaction, avoiding serious damage. The man who was in the restroom at the time felt completely incomprehensible about what was happening and vaguely wondered what was going on in this place and what mysterious events were unfolding. As the girl hurried away from the guy, a stranger who appeared on the horizon politely asked if she would like a boat ride, offering her a casual vacation and new experiences. She didn't even listen to him, for she had her own plans, and without thinking, she pushed him into the water, showing her determination and independence. Now on the boat, she decided to watch the guy try to catch up with her, for she had curiosity and interest in his reaction. At this time, the protagonist had already reached the harbor, feeling mixed emotions and trying to understand what was happening on the water, where the girl had disappeared to. He noticed that the girl was away, being very far away from him, and in that instant he felt mixed feelings. A sense of loss and some excitement. The girl had been teasing him the whole time and asking him or he wanted her to wait until he swam to her. While she didn't doubt his abilities, she realized that she knew the area perfectly and he had no chance of catching her. Besides, once she made it to the other side, he would lose track of her forever. It was her theory, but she couldn't contain her laughter, imagining people thinking he was standing helplessly on the shore, unable to do anything. The protagonist, immersed in contemplation, focused on what steps to take to solve his situation, worrying and trying to find the best solution in a landscape of vast water and a disappearing sunset. And then, as if gaining determination, he literally rushed forward, hurtling across the water at a maddening speed, like a madman, not caring about anything. The people on the boat were amazed that the guy was rushing through the water and thought it was part of some kind of show. Looking around in amazement and delight, the girl turned around to see what was happening and saw a guy running through the water. She stopped, looking at the scene in bewilderment, hardly realizing what was going on. Seeing the guy running on the water, the girl was scared to death. Her heart beat so hard that it seemed that it would jump out of her chest, and she remained motionless, stunned by what she saw. And then the main character crashed into the boat without noticing, causing a wave of panic and commotion among the people on it. The girl erupted with rage seeing that the guy had caused such havoc. Her eyes expressed anger and she could hardly contain the urge to express her emotions. He stood in front of her, gazing into her eyes, waiting for a reaction. There was a tense atmosphere in the silence, as if you could feel his excitement and her anger in the air. She wondered if he was even human, for he ran again, causing surprise and bewilderment with his behavior this time. At this time, Xiaofei was convincing himself that Brother Lin would be fine, but time dragged on slowly, and although only 2 minutes had passed, his absence seemed interminable. Her heart beat harder at the thought of her brother and she realized something was wrong. Excitement took over and she began to look around anxiously, searching for him. A car appeared right in front of her, like the embodiment of time. time. She stopped in amazement, but her heart still rattled with an anxious beat. The very men who had once tried to kidnap her were there, and in that moment she felt fear and anxiety engulf her again. The girl was very much surprised by what she saw before her, by the sudden brightness of her new world, as if it were unfolding before her like the pages of an ancient book, where every turn, every phrase came alive and shimmered with vivid colors, making her heart beat faster in anticipation of the unknown. The girl still could not understand why the guy was chasing after her, because she was sure that she was not worth his attention, as if he was trying to unravel her secrets and penetrate into the most hidden corners of her soul, as if in her melted the answers to all his questions and secrets that he was so eager to solve. She realized that she couldn't beat the guy and took him by the leg, mouthing words about him being a hero, as if in that moment she felt that their destinies were inextricably intertwined, and even in the rush of resistance she saw something amazing and sublime in him. She opened her heart to him. A relative is sick and she needs to raise money for treatment. He asked her to leave her alone, realizing that she needs peace despite the storms of life. But even if he has a problem, that's no excuse for stealing. If her Newman does have a terminal illness, perhaps she could help him in other ways without resorting to a crime. But events suddenly took an unexpected turn when the girl suddenly tasered him and, wincing for a moment, asked if he actually believed it. Foolishly, a man lets his guard down. It's worth it for a woman to show weakness, as if forgetting that this is when she can be the strongest and most dangerous. He also seems to have the disease of useless power and thoughtlessness, so let him give her a chance to heal him with this shock therapy. Maybe that's how he'll realize his irrationality. She keeps her distance, preparing for more strikes, and he stands hopelessly, unable to resist her might, each moment only strengthening her control over the situation. He tries to scramble to conduct the electricity back to her, but unfortunately Hare is not a conductor of electricity and his plan falls apart, leaving him helpless before her power. He acknowledged that Hare didn't conduct electricity, but reminded her that the splash of vodka he'd hit her hair with had already dampened it, reinforcing his attempts to find a way out of this situation. Now that they were both soaked in water, it was as if they had become parts of a single conductor connecting them in this tense moment where every movement could trigger an unexpected reaction. And at that moment, electricity really began to flow through the girl's hair, as if it had become a chain through which powerful energy flowed, revitalizing her strength and power. And then both were squirming in pain from the electricity, as if every cell in their bodies felt the searing flames of the tension, making them shiver and moan in agony. Still, the girl finally fell into the water, and the guy stayed on the boat, watching her disappear underwater, feeling a stirring mixture of relief and anxiety. Then, strangely enough, the current began to hit her just under the water, as if the electricity knew no bounds and penetrated to the very depths, causing her body to shake in spasms of pain. There was so much electricity that even the fish died and rose to the surface of the water, as if the force of this voltage was so enormous that it affected all living things around. The protagonist decided to help her and lent a long helping hand, as if wanting to pull her out of that flood of electricity and save her from imminent danger. The girl coughed violently as she climbed out, as if the water in her lungs made her fight for each breath, and each one was painful and difficult. She would still hand over the wallet and say she had planned to steal it when they met today. Why did he save her? He saw her body before his eyes and decided it was better to die than leave her in danger. But this whole situation was the girl's fault, because she acted as if it was all his fault. If she stole again, he would be sure to find her and take action. She begged him to stop, but he kept insisting, and his act made her so wet that she felt nauseated by his presence. When she started crying, the guy realized it was some act of weakness again, but this time he doesn't give in to it. Honestly, with her powers she's quite capable of doing something right. May she never steal again, because sooner or later she will be caught, and then the consequences will be unpredictable. The girl continued to cry, her tears flowing even after the guy left, as if they were evidence of her deep sadness and disappointment left over from what had happened. And then the slicing stopped with the words that the freeze frame had been removed, as if the completed scene had left behind moments of incomprehensible plot. She said he wasn't fooled. As soon as he saw her crying he ran away, going soft, not even noticing that more important than what he returned was actually empty. Her ability to make good choices is limited, making her life boring and lacking in variety. Despite this, the girl noticed that she was very tired, as if the internal struggles and difficult decisions had taken a lot of energy from her. Still, the guy decided to check his wallet and realized that there really wasn't a penny in there, as if confirming that his trust in the girl was in vain. Then, when he turned to look at his friend, he did not find her in her accustomed place, sitting on the bench as usual, and his heart clenched with sudden alarm. At this time the men were sure that on the lad's return he would cry like a child deprived of maternal care, who had lost his mother. Their hearts were full of sympathy for him. They speculate that the guy didn't expect his girlfriend to be taken right after he left, and this unexpected turn of events left him in a state of shock and anxiety. They can't let the girl they need so badly slip away so easily, and this time they're determined that this rogue won't find them. They're willing to take any measures to protect her. The protagonist began to inhale the air around him, his nostrils filled with the smells of his surroundings. He tried to catch any signs of the presence of danger or anything unusual in the air. He caught the girl's scent and realized he could track her, but it had been about 5 minutes. She was gone, and now he would have to do his best to catch up with her. It was at this time that he noticed someone watching him from behind. The sensation of someone's presence made him tense up and cautiously look over his shoulder. On the sparse path among the ancient trees, that guy reappeared, accompanied by his powerful motorcycle. He aroused admiration and attention, looking mysterious and bold, with eyes holding boundless secrets, hair fluttering in the wind. With a bewildered glance at the central character, he expressed his amazement with a look in which some mixture of surprise and admiration crept in. With an unchanged expression on his face that combined curiosity and a kind of mystery, the protagonist continued to stare at him persistently. The boy felt a sense of excitement, for he could only guess what events might unfold before him at the moment, and it made him nervous. Remaining silent, the protagonist continued to stare at the guy, as if his eyes communicated something important and unfathomable, creating tension between them. The guy, unable to bear further observation, completely lost his composure and began to get very nervous, experiencing an excitement that made his heart beat faster. When the protagonist finally did his deed, the guy instantly realized exactly what he expected to happen and confidently left, leaving behind those words confirming his foresight. While the man was expecting, his plans came to fruition and the girl was already delivered to the appointed place as he had intended. They slowly made their way into the huge palace, step by step immersing themselves in its inner beauty and grandeur, feeling the air filled with an atmosphere of luxury and mystery surrounding every corner. The expanse of this structure was attended by a vast number of guards whose sights were set on security and maintaining order. The men left the building, uttering words about the delivery of new goods and the possibility of an exchange for the defective copy, thus giving them the opportunity to replace the defective goods. Captain K stood before them, holding the defective goods that had been the subject of their discussion. Beaten and exhausted, the girl lay before them, her emaciated body betraying signs of disfigurement, and her defenseless appearance evoked compassion and concern from those present. Turning to my men, he begged that the girl be put near the hospital, urging that she might be assisted and the possibility of death prevented. The captain insisted that they leave the place, assuring them that payment would be made later, and asked them to leave so as not to attract unnecessary attention. When the captain was informed that there was some information available, he noted that they should have said so from the beginning, expressing some frustration and expectation of full and timely communication of the information. The men noted that it took a lot of effort to catch this girl, and that they deserved at least a small opportunity to try out their own product, since they had put in so much work. Immediately thereafter, one of the men engaged in dialogue, expressing his thoughts and contradictory arguments, prompting further discussion and divided opinions among those present. The captain expressively showed his disagreement with the position expressed by the men, emphasizing his opposing point of view and causing some tension in the discussion. The partners found themselves confused, unable to understand exactly what Captain K was involved in and what actions he was taking, which left them feeling bewildered and uncertain. Captain K warned that any attempt to interfere with them would have serious consequences, as he was prepared to destroy their capabilities and threatened to undermine their position. The men felt the need to change their outlook and immediately began apologizing, realizing they were wrong and regretting their previous actions and statements. The captain expressed his fury and ordered them to leave the place, calling them Icterim and demanding that they get away from there. The men were shocked and could not believe that they were in danger of a similar situation happening again. They felt anxious and worried, fearing that what was happening could happen again. Let them be assured that Captain K is the best bodyguard here, and realize that they cannot risk messing with him or confronting him. The captain continued to lead the girl away in an unknown direction, advancing with persistence and determination, leaving the others puzzled as to his intentions and goals. The man asked the girl if she wanted to know the reason why he hit him, showing some interest in explaining his act. Xiaofei was completely confused and didn't know what to answer the question. Besides, she couldn't even physically fulfill this request. That girl turned out to be the kindergarten teacher of the man's daughter. They had met several times at the children's PTA meeting. However, yesterday she had been kidnapped off the street and brought here by 3 long-haired men. Unfortunately, in this case he is only the captain of the guards and could not act against the will of the employer. He could not release her surreptitiously or without the consent of the employer. The girl began to imagine what was happening here and a feeling of dread gripped her. She was scared and anxious about her fate, not knowing what would happen next. They stopped abruptly in front of the door, creating a tense situation and raising questions about what was behind it and what would happen next. And the only way out of here was to find a way out through that door, no matter what was behind it. They were willing to take the risk to free themselves from this situation and return to safety. They realized that their lives depended on whether they could successfully pass through the door and escape the current dangerous situation. After these words, the captain unknowingly kicked the girl, sending her to her room, thus causing her even more anxiety and worry. The girl had no choice but to make a decision in line with what the previous girl had done to survive and cope with the situation. Xiaofei decided to scrutinize her surroundings to understand what was going on around her and find any clues or way out of this situation. She scanned the room, looking for any signs or indicators that would help her make sense of the current situation. She saw two strangers standing in front of her in close proximity. They looked tense and suspicious, causing her to feel unsure and cautious. Xiaofei decided to be vigilant and assess the situation before proceeding further. One of them, not paying attention to the people around them at all, was literally stabbing, which made Xiaofei even more anxious and shocked. She realized that she was in a dangerous situation and must carefully continue her actions. Strangely enough, this person was getting unforgettable emotions from his actions. Perhaps it was a way for him to experience adrenaline or other unusual feelings. This peculiarity of his behavior only increased the unpredictability of the situation, making Xiaofei even more anxious. He, after his actions, claimed to have seen and understood almost everything in the universe. This caused Xiaofei to have mixed feelings of amazement, doubt, and anxiety. The men shared that his actions made him feel like he was in heaven, delighted and happy, which confused Xiaofei, but she realized that it could be important to their situation. Xiaofei began to ask questions about who they were and why they had brought her here. She felt the need to know their true motives to better understand how to handle this situation. Among them was one of the three heirs of the famous Li family, Li Sungguk. The woman couldn't imagine how many powerful people would fall on their knees and start sucking up to such a rich man. As for her, people are told that she's the most beautiful boy they've seen in their lives, so he won't introduce himself since he's just one of Mr. Lee's assistants. Yeah, if they are such big shots, why do they need a simple girl like her? They can't arrest people just because they are rich and powerful. The men said he's had enough of this shit and that she's like a pain in the ass, implying that he's sick of her presence and she's getting annoying. Then slowly took the torture instruments, giving Xiaofei a feeling of fear and a sophisticated intent to hurt her. He said that because of those bitches, he could never enjoy himself, expressing his resentment and frustration. Xiaofei was scared, but she still asked what he was going to do. She was trying to understand the danger she was in and how she could defend herself. The guy forgot to tell her that the master used to suffer because of his attraction to pretty girls, and that's why he attracts pretty girls to him. This resentment has affected him very deeply, and that's why he sometimes enjoys bringing pain to people like her, as it makes the master happy. Yes indeed, if this situation causes her family to suffer, it would be unfair and not good. Xiaofei realizes that her own safety and well-being should not come at the expense of her loved ones. The girl couldn't understand what the guy was talking about and came to the conclusion that they were just crazy. It seemed to her that their motives and actions had no logical explanation and they acted irrationally or irrationally. Then she was instantly hit right on the arm. Pain and daze engulfed her and she realized that the situation had become even more dangerous and violent. The men told her to just shut up and be quiet, a clear manifestation of his desire to control her and suppress her voice, and then wanted her to scream even more. The more she screamed, the more it turned him on. The guy who owns the motorcycle asked the protagonist if he wanted to be killed. He stole his motorcycle to come here, and now he's wondering if the protagonist knows who lives here. The protagonist was also intrigued and curious about who lived in the place. He was curious about who was the occupant of the house or the area they traveled to on the stolen motorcycle. There lives Li Sungguk, a super rich impotent pervert. Because of this physiology he became very paranoid. After inheriting the family secret, sent his parishioner to the street to visit beautiful women for his own purposes, after which he releases them and gags them and their parents with money by his threats. There were no deaths, but many girls suffer from mental disorders. In this villa where Li Sungguk resides, there are secret and perverted events that no one suspects, because to everyone he seems straightforward and easygoing. But in fact he hides his impotence and sends his enablers to the streets to fulfill his perverted needs with beautiful women, threatening them and keeping it all a secret. The guy in question accidentally stumbled into Li Sungguk's villa and witnessed his secret and perverted actions, learning about it firsthand, causing him to be shocked and misunderstood. The guy didn't care about Li Sungguk's secret actions, as his main goal was to get back the kidnapped girl he promised to protect. His interest and importance centered on rescuing and bringing her back despite all the other secrets and perversions going on in the villa. Of course, the protagonist is single, but not alone. After all, he has a team of mercenaries as bodyguards. Though he's not crazy, he's tired of life. The guys clarified that the territory is private. Outsiders are not allowed to enter. It's time for the hero to stop. Despite his desire to penetrate further, the protagonist stood before the gate behind which he was waiting, his gaze sliding over his bodyguards, strong but seemingly not completely reliable, and doubt grew in his soul as to whether he would be able to get through the gate and meet what awaited him there. Suddenly, Suddenly, at this crucial moment, the protagonist decisively stepped forward and literally burst through the gate, as if expressing his indomitable will and determination to go through all obstacles to achieve his goal. The astonished lad could not hide his surprise at the unexpected development, his face expressing obvious bewilderment as the protagonist resolutely entered through the gate, thus breaking the thin shroud of expectation and predictability. Now that the main character has overcome the gate, the real show has begun. Moments of suspense, intrigue and unexpected turns of events that will make the viewer hold their breath and follow the hero's every move. The protagonist was determined and obsessive. His goal was to win back his girlfriend and get back together, and nothing could distract him from this unwavering determination to regain what he had lost. It became clear to the guards that getting under the tattooed arm of the protagonist could mean going even to heaven. Their anxiety increased, because this guy is not worth playing with. He is ready to do anything to achieve his goal. The bodyguards of the Divine Front had never faced worthy opponents, and for those who decided to test their strength in battle, defeat inevitably awaited. These warriors were ruthless and merciless. Their victory was certain. The protagonist stood motionless, full of confidence in his victory over the Divine Front bodyguards. He knew he could defeat them without much effort and waited for his moment to act. The guy realized that in front of him was a group of Divine Front bodyguards, claimed by the training of the Eastern Laser. There were rumors around that they were outstanding fighters, and even when facing the best, they knew no fear. Their bravery and skill had no limits. Even if this guy has enough brute strength to break through the gate, he will realize that he will face a brave team of Divine Front bodyguards, and realize that it takes not only physical might, but also skill and determination to overcome them. Despite all the assumptions and conversations, the protagonist easily began to deal with this team of bodyguards, as if whipping them like the wind of spring rains. Demonstrating his strength and skill, the men clearly did not expect the lad to be so capable, and they were amazed at his skill and determination when under his attack. After realizing that they should leave early, the men realized that they urgently needed to go to the dentist to get their teeth fixed after meeting this guy, who turned out to be much stronger than their expectations. The men literally scattered after the whole incident, leaving a trail of haste and uncertainty behind them. Their decision to leave the place was understandable after meeting the unpredictable guy. The guy might not have allowed himself to make jokes about them, for the main thing remained his strength, which made a strong impression, commanding respect and caution even from those who chose to leave him. And then he noticed some men approaching Lena, causing the guy to be cautiously curious and attentive to what was going on. The protagonist stood faithfully, watching this man closely, his gaze full of determination and observation, ready to react to any possible threats or changes in the situation. The men declared that he didn't belong here and insisted on his right to leave, which caused the protagonist surprise and some anxiety, because it wasn't clear what role this stranger was playing in this whole situation. The protagonist felt as if he did not take this man's words seriously at all, as if his decisions and statements had no meaning or authority to him, which made him feel perplexed and somewhat disdainful. He stated that they must return the girl to him and only then would he leave, which expressed his determination and willingness to act to achieve his goal. Despite possible obstacles or threats, the man only said he understood, and that could mean a number of things, from agreement to a veiled threat or a simple acknowledgement of his position. And then the guy disappeared so imperceptibly and quickly, as if he vanished into thin air, leaving behind him only a trace of mystery and indecision, which added mystery to the whole situation. The impact was so strong that the protagonist flew back a few meters, as if carried by an invisible force. His body traversed space with astonishing force and speed, causing the surrounding people to be surprised and alarmed. It was so fast and strong that it was simply unbelievable, as if the power contributing to it was beyond normal human comprehension, causing admiration and amazement to all who saw it in action. The men pointed out that the guy is not bad. It's amazing that he's even still standing, clarifying that the last time he also made a punch. One guy died from ruptured internal organs on the spot, and therefore he, Lu Benwei, is willing to recognize him as the most resilient opponent. He was known as an internationally wanted criminal, an amazing character who claimed to be able to rule the world with an iron hand. His name commanded awe and respect, and his words were enigmatic and threatening. Its robotic arm is said to be capable of striking at speeds of up to 200 kilometers per hour, allowing it to easily punch through steel doors, creating powerful and devastating impacts that can shock any opponent. The man does not wish to remain a security guard for this scumbag. However, his financial dependence on him is too great. If he knows what this guy is capable of, have him warn his young friend to go to a safe place and not spoil the mood of the owner inside. The guy warned the protagonist that simply bullying the girl would not result in her release, as they would feel tired. He said that before people had tried to free her by force, but they had all had their legs broken. Lin felt the pulse of life in his body for the first time since she fell ill, and for the sake of a girl like her, he was willing to break his leg just to regain her freedom and save her from suffering. In addition, there was still the question of which of them would win in the end and which would die, which added unpredictability and tension to their situation. Immediately afterward, the men launched an attack on him, as if choosing the moment to attack with maximum surprise, forcing the protagonist to act on the edge of his abilities. But the protagonist was easily able to thwart this attack by displaying a high level of skill and reaction, which confirmed his skill and experience in fighting. And then claws emerged from this iron hand, which darted straight towards the guy's fingers, creating a threat and causing panic, for this new attack was unexpected and unseen before. Let them say that the men had not warned him, but the next step would turn out to be a deadly threat to him. It was a clear demonstration that the situation was becoming more tense and dangerous by the moment. He also warned him if he moved, he would be left without his invincible arm. The men erupted with rage. He couldn't understand how this guy dared to threaten him, causing his anger and determination to resist the challenge. He brought death upon himself, the cocky kid provoking the anger and determination of his opponent, who couldn't understand how this guy dared threaten him. Erupted in rage, he decided that he would make a sieve out of this guy and wished that he would go to hell with rage and hatred for his opponent. These blades were coated with poison. One cut and the victim would die of suffocation. The men didn't know it, but if he died, his last moments would be filled with nightmares. At this point, the protagonist abruptly cuts off the man's arm, demonstrating his determination and bravery, his willingness to act at the right moment despite the possible consequences. He was squirming in pain, realizing the horror of what the guy had inflicted on him, his body filled with excruciating anguish, caused not only by physical but emotional torment as well. He prayed for forgiveness, for he had already been to hell. If Hades didn't take him, who could? Such thoughts plagued him as he squirmed in pain. The man's arm flew a few meters away from the point of impact, falling to the ground with a heavy thud, emphasizing the power and strength of that blow. The guy couldn't understand what was wrong with that hand, but suddenly it turned into a blade and cut off his arm, causing him unbearable pain and shock. The protagonist instantly returned his arm to normal, showing his strength and confidence despite the unexpected turn of events and attack from his opponent. And then, with ease and without any trouble, the man struck, continuing to show his power and aggression in this bout. He flew back a few meters from the guy's blow, falling heavily to the ground, emphasizing the power and strength of this collision that made him retreat. The man was squirming in pain, in unbearable agony from the blows inflicted by the guy, and his body was in indescribable pain, making him suffer in agony. He went down before the guy could land a few more punches as he decided to put a little more effort into it. In the past, he had claimed to be invincible. The men didn't believe in it before, but rumor has it that there is a new form of people with psychic abilities, as well as abilities related to space or something similar. The men recognized that he was no match for the lad and allowed him to proceed freely, clearing him of obstacles in his path. Of course, the man wasn't going to let the guy go so easily and drew his gun, preparing for a more serious resolution to the situation. Let the protagonist, silent in his thoughts, inwardly unwilling to admit it, realize that even if he allows the possibility of entering into it, it is indistinguishable from a withdrawal that is made in the midst of uncertainty and discontent, like an escape that is undertaken with a sense of surrender and hopelessness. Then, without hesitation, he fired, the bullet piercing the air, heading straight for the boy. His eyes reflected a mixture of fear and determination, as if he were on the verge of making an irreversible decision. The trajectory of the bullet clearly showed that it pierced the main character's head, as if expressing the finality of his fate and the inevitability of the consequences of his actions at that moment. Losing his mind, the man rejoiced, for he was sure that he would again receive a generous reward for his insane act, as if the act would be a source of prosperity and satisfaction for him. The guy standing next to him apparently didn't foresee such an unexpected development, as if events had suddenly taken a direction he hadn't expected at all. The man literally lost his mind from what began to happen, as if reality was blurring before his eyes and he could not come to terms with what was happening around him. He asked the protagonist if he was afraid he wouldn't be able to walk with his head proudly up, as if to find out if he would retain his self-confidence in the face of incredible adversity. But the guy asked if the men had ever considered the fate of the girls they kidnap, and how he would be able to walk with his head held high afterward. As if exploring the depth of his empathy and moral strength, he would let him go, as if realizing that holding him captive against his will was something unnatural and unjust. But since he was so persistent in his desire to make him angry, let him himself be exposed to the danger involved and get his well-deserved portion. The man asked if he thought he was a joke. After all, he was just a watchdog trying to feed himself and shouldn't be taken too seriously, as if to emphasize his simplicity and lack of threat. But everything he had seemed just as cheap, and he didn't need anything more from it, as if he realized that material possessions lose their value before spiritual well-being. Immediately afterward, the protagonist suddenly and without hesitation attacked the man, as if the rage that erupted made him act in a burst of instant fury and determination. He asked the man if he ate monkey brains, as if to emphasize the aggressive and defiant nature of his question. He felt the pain of the boy's actions, as if every move he made became a blow to his own beliefs and emotions, decomposing his soul into pieces. He reminded the men of his own words about meeting in hell, as if emphasizing the inevitability of karmic vengeance and the looming threat of punishment for his actions. The men noticed the guy's hand slowly rising towards his face, as if anticipating an unflattering confrontation and preparing for a possible attack. Lin asked if the man was truly invincible, as if questioning his insurmountable strength and steadfastness. He then sent the man far, far away, as if getting rid of him for good and sending him into the unknown with the hope of finally ending the conflict. Let him rather spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair reflecting on his actions, as if the punishment for his deeds will bring him a greater awareness of the consequences of his actions. He then called politely to say goodbye, as if leaving behind a pleasant impression before he went on his way. Having been remembered as a benevolent and well-mannered man, but without waiting for an answer, he literally broke in, as if his impatience had turned into a determination to act without waiting or thinking. When the protagonist entered the house, the worker informed him that a stranger was in the house, seemingly causing him to feel disoriented and unexpected. The guy patted the protagonist on the shoulder, expressing approval for what he had done, as if to emphasize solidarity and recognition of his actions. It was truly marvelous. It even took his breath away, and it was worth it to come here, as if the meeting had exceeded all expectations and left an unforgettable impression. At this time the guy dialed a number and prepared to deliver a message, as if preparing for an important conversation that could affect the current situation or developments. Guy acknowledges the presence of another soul-obsessed one, confident that he will appreciate his abilities, as if recognizing him as a like-minded individual in the pursuit of his goals. Mr. Lee continued to avoid the girl and could not understand what was going on outside the window, as if the mysterious sounds outside were distracting him from his inner thoughts and problems. The noise outside completely breaks his mood, as if preventing him from enjoying the moment and distracting him from the pleasure he was expecting to receive at this moment. Well, how is it possible, with all these experts outside, for not a single mosquito to even manage to get inside? As if that causes him surprise and bewilderment. Just for some reason today my left eyelid keeps throbbing while the guy correctly spent big money on these criminals. If he fears for his life he better get some dogs at the entrance. That weeping, snotty face was truly disgusting. He was quickly losing interest, but instead he gritted his teeth and stubbornly refused to beg for mercy, even now, as if he wasn't going to show weakness in front of him. It was very interesting that the blood in his veins began to boil, as if a sign of increasing rage or excitement brought on by the unusual situation. Let him not even think about the fact that he could beg for mercy from a scum like him, because inevitable retribution awaits him, as if the law of inevitability were at his back. He exploded with rage upon hearing this, as if the words were the catalyst for his inner anger to explode with unrelenting force, engulfing him completely. He might as well say that once he handled a dangerous incident. It caused only short-term trouble, but he solved it by paying off a few people and had no more problems. Let the men eventually kill her, and the girl will become a ghost that will haunt him for the rest of his days, as if carrying the unceasing shadow of his past deeds. He asked if the girl had thought for 10 years now that his punishment was imminent and that a hero would suddenly appear, saving her from his hands. If he really is coming to save her life, that would be really wonderful, he thought, as if the possibility of rescue gave him hope and comfort. At that moment, the protagonist appeared, rescuing his girlfriend like a true protector, ready to stand in her defense and risk everything for her well-being. Surprisingly, the guy shot right at his head, as if determined to finally end the threat in front of him and protect his girlfriend at all costs. The man's face changed instantly, as if the sudden event had caused him to react violently, leaving a trace of surprise and perhaps fear on his face. The main friend, always determined and confident in his actions, was ready to go all the way, no matter what. He stood his ground, overcoming all difficulties with courage and determination. How dare he bitch, swearing and attacking his owner at his very home. He knows exactly where he is, but his anger and aggression knows no bounds. The guy instantly received a crushing blow from the protagonist, whose determination and strength proved unrivaled, making the guy feel the full force of his determination and skill in battle. The blow was so powerful that the guy flew into the Lord with a clatter, emphasizing the strength and unstoppability of the protagonist who couldn't contain his rage and skill in battle. His biggest concern was not his skill in fighting or punching, but his perfect nose after his 50th facelift, which became a symbol of perfect looks and self-assertion for him. He began to slowly die inside from the realization of what was happening to his face, each day becoming more and more distant from his ideal of beauty and perfection. The girl carefully opened her eyes to see who had already arrived, feeling a little excited and curious, watching to see who would enter her world. But when she opened her eyes and saw the protagonist in front of her, she felt relief and joy, realizing that he had come to her aid in this difficult moment. But the protagonist's gaze threw something else at her that caused excitement and some anxiety, adding to the joy of his arrival with new, unexpected sensations. As it it turned out, the main thing was the blood, which remained the girl's bitch all this time, which caused bewilderment and shock to everyone present, including the protagonist. Tears began to self-pour into the girl's eyes at that moment, as if reflecting her inner struggle and shock at the unexpected discovery. She began to sob, realizing that he had been willing to make many sacrifices for her, and the thought pierced her heart with excitement and regret. The protagonist realized what was happening and reached out to the kidnapped girl to try to understand her situation and help her. He was willing to support her and fight against Lee Sung-guk and his sinister actions. In hopes of bringing her back to safety, Xiaofei was able to finally open up and tell the main character that the man, Lee Sung-guk, not only kidnapped her, but also abused her by beating her and threatening her family not to tell anyone about what was happening. She expressed her desire for revenge for everything that was done to her. The protagonist sincerely apologized to Xiaofei, realizing that his delay and failure to protect her had led to her falling into the hands of Lee Sung-guk and being abused. The guards, hearing the noise and alarm, could not react slowly and immediately ran to the room where Lee Sung-guk was. They were eager to catch the intruder and stop his atrocities, restoring order and security to the villa. The guy, not wanting to mess with the guards and expecting justice, offered to get Xiaofei out of this situation on his own. He suggested a rescue plan so they could discreetly leave the villa and get away from Lee Sung-guk. Xiaofei quickly prepared herself, knowing that they would have to go out through the window, and she and her boyfriend decided to take a bold risk to leave the villa and gain their freedom. The protagonist begged Xiaofei not to worry, assuring her that as long as he was around, she would be safe and he would do his best to protect her and ensure her survival. The protagonist, then, resorted to his transformation ability to change his appearance to help them avoid detection and pursuit. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the protagonist literally had wings that allowed him and Xiaofei to soar into the air and fly away from the dangerous situation, leaving his pursuers behind and gaining new freedom. As the protagonist took off and flew away using his newly emerged wings, he smiled wryly, perhaps enjoying the moment as they left their pursuers behind and gained freedom, showing that they could not be defeated. The guy asked the girl if she was ready for something, implying that they might be facing a new challenge or danger, and he wanted to make sure she was ready to handle it together. The guy then accelerated and began to fly even faster, eager to cover the distance and get them away from danger. He used his abilities and strength to provide them with a safe path and allow them to slip away from pursuit. They flew over the breathtaking landscape views, feeling the freedom and marveling at the beauty of nature unfolding beneath them. The protagonist and Xiaofei savoring these moments, forgetting their problems and dangers for a while and just enjoying this unique flight. He asked her not to hug him so tightly, warning her that she could strangle him with her strength. She realized the importance of not hurting the man for fear of his possible retaliation and decided to approach the situation with caution, seeking a peaceful resolution and avoiding negative consequences. He gently asked her not to feel fear in his presence, promising that no matter his past or personality, he would never hurt or harm her. Although he claims otherwise, he's actually lying to her. He just stabbed him and instantly ran away, implying that he's not willing to go to his death for her sake. The girl admitted that her whole body ached, as if every cell of her felt the pain. It happened to the main character that he asked a girl to touch his face with her hand, and in that gesture he asked her to find mutual support and comfort. Immediately after the girl touched his face, something healing in her own being began to take place, as if an invisible force began to penetrate her body and soul, relieving pain and bringing healing. They felt their powers joined by the guy's strength, as if invisible threads of energy intertwined between them, creating a powerful bond capable of overcoming any difficulties and obstacles. Her wounds actually began to heal right before her eyes, as if her body itself was responding to their connection and bringing healing at an incredible rate, leaving only faint traces of past injuries. The protagonist was imbued with curiosity, wondering if this vast improvement or transformation was really better than he expected. Xiaofei reported that the pain was no longer felt at all, as if it had completely disappeared, and this filled the protagonist with a sense of relief and joy. Ever since she met him, she stopped feeling scared all the time because she knows that when a guy is around, he will always find a way to protect her and it makes her feel safe. The boy noticed that he had earlier expressed a desire to always be by her side, and now they both wondered what that could mean. The girl, at the same time, was having trouble understanding her own feelings and could not dare to admit them. The main character started to get excited and said that of course he didn't mind being around the girl always. He felt that this connection and security they found in each other was something special and important to him. The main character met her right after breaking up with his ex, and he even helped her confess her feelings. Probably, he was insanely happy that so easily there was a new girl in his life, who filled the emptiness and brought joy. The main character, upon learning that all of the girl's money was missing, immediately approaches her to comfort and support her, promising that they will find a way to solve this problem together and that she will not be alone in her difficulties. When she learned that he remembered the smell of other people's women, she burst into tears even harder. Being a hero, he was able to understand what it meant to her, her deep confusion and the pain his memory of other women sent caused her. At this time, a luxurious car arrived at Mr. Lee's house, arousing the admiration and curiosity of the protagonist. He watched it, wondering who could be inside and what brought it here. As it turned out, there were several passengers in the luxurious car, and they were all heading exactly to Mr. Lee's house. This made the protagonist even more interested and questioned about the reasons for such a sudden visit. At this time, they were greeted by the warm sun, which affectionately illuminated their surroundings. Eventually, they arrived and, with expressions of curiosity, got out of the car, stepping forward and taking in their surroundings, welcoming the warm rays of the sun. One woman approached the security guard saying she was sick of living and demanded he open the door faster, calling him a useless piece of shit. She was curious about how her boy was feeling and what he was doing at the moment. Lee Dong-wook was a prominent and influential founder of the group. His entrepreneurial skills and visionary approach helped shape and grow the company to a high level of success. Lee Dong-wook said they were going inside, pointing in the direction and urging the others to follow him. The eldest son named Lee Sung-ho and his granddaughter Lee Moo were present in the house, fitting into the family environment and creating an atmosphere of unity and closeness among the Lee family members. The daughter asked her father how he was able to say everything was okay despite the challenges and obstacles they faced. Even though he's just a half-brother and they don't get along, he's become the new head of the family. However, something has happened to him and he's worth checking in on and finding out what happened. At this time, there was a report going on that said that in their world, sometimes miracles happen and you never know when you'll get the chance to find something amazing. Like today when they came here, they heard a story about an old man who saw a giant bird soaring in the sky. This morning, while working in the field, he looked up and saw a huge bird soaring through the air, with wings over 3 meters long, perhaps even all 5 meters. She swiftly rushed through the air and disappeared in the blink of an eye, seeming to dissolve before their eyes, leaving behind only a whirlwind of emotion and an incredible sense of amazement. When his tractor was stolen, he erupted in rage and instantly rushed in pursuit of the thief, intent on recovering his property and punishing those responsible. When the mother escaped, she was surprised and outraged at whoever dared to beat her son like that. She intended to find the offender and get justice for her injured child. She turned to her grandfather and asked if he could see what was happening and then asked him to make a decision on their behalf. However, before making a decision, their brother needed to get her to the hospital for medical attention. This was the first priority to ensure her safety and health care. The granddaughter insisted that everyone get into action and take their share of responsibility to handle the situation and resolve the problems. The mother was surprised that her son, usually such an obedient child, had been the victim of violence. He had always lived peacefully and quietly in this place and she could not understand why he had been so mistreated. However, the answer to this question must be known to the abuser himself. Dong-wook turned to the guy and asked interestedly what exactly he had seen, hoping to get key details and evidence to make sense of the situation and take appropriate action. If someone tries to withhold something from Dong-wook, the guard will send that person to feed the fish at the bottom of the sea, implying punishment or intimidation for those who withhold information or commit bad faith. Master Lee acquired it, thereby expressing his interest in or acquisition of a thing, object or perhaps a person. Details of the acquisition and his intentions may be additional information. The granddaughter could not understand what the expression bought meant. She was having difficulty with exactly how Master Lee bought something and needed an explanation or further clarification about it. And the father decided to tell his daughter that her uncle was gay. A mother must show faith in her son, but seriously investigate the allegations of his assault on a stranger to find out the truth, and ensure the safety of all parties involved. Everything he said is true. The foreman was kicked in his stall once when he raped another woman, then his motor couldn't run anymore. That's why he hates those women. The mother was experiencing shock and confusion in the face of the fact that her son could no longer have children and needed support and information to realize and accept this new reality. Immediately afterward, she collapsed and fainted, probably from the emotional and physical stress caused by the information she received about her son's infertility. As it turned out, Lee Moo believed that her son's infertility situation was deserved and fair, perhaps because of her son's previous actions or behaviors that Lee Moo thought were inappropriate or wrong. The person who caused the harm may have left some message that may contain information about their motives, identity, or other important details. The guy said the man was right, and before he said something, he asked me to tell these well-to-do people who will be here soon to remember to come and apologize. The woman was shocked at the message the guy was carrying. She wondered how he thought of himself to have so much audacity to hit a family member over the head and make him apologize to him. The guy, although realizing the power of his family, still dared to strike one of them. Perhaps he has his own reasons why they might go and try to calm him down. Her mother flared with rage at the thought of the man actually wanting to go and apologize. She couldn't understand how he dared to hurt and now was going to reconcile. Men seemed to treat their brother with indifference, disregarding his efforts to correct what happened, not appreciating his attempts at reconciliation or righting wrongs. The aunt, also being a woman, should show compassion for those who face violence, realizing that there is no shame in seeking their forgiveness and the end of that conflict. The mother erupted with rage at hearing that she was being told how to act, even herself facing being dictated to by others. Dan-wook repeatedly reminded him of the importance of clear thinking, cautioning him against the risk of infatuation and urging him to spend carefully, for this became his main concern when the moment came for him to hand over his status as head of the family. At this time, the protagonist flew to the very place where the pivotal event of his story would unfold. Filling his heart with anticipation and excitement for the challenges ahead, he gently lowered the girl onto the balcony, feeling the warmth of her hand in his, realizing that this moment would be a memorable one in their shared history. Filling their hearts with joy and hope for the future, have him take a look around the house to make sure no one is there, because I don't want to worry about anyone seeing her in that condition. But this house is not that bad at all. It is likely to turn into a cozy dwelling where we feel comfortable and relaxed. The girl decided to change her clothes and asked him to wait a moment while she got ready, filling the air with anticipation of new events and excitement for the upcoming change. She also told him not to peek, emphasizing her right to privacy and respect, reserving her moment of intimacy and privacy. He could peek, but did he risk it? The mystery drew him in, but fear stopped him, for any moment could reveal itself. But to understand gentlemen, one must see them openly, face to face. He couldn't figure out what was wrong. Looking at the curtains that had drawn ajar, perhaps there was a secret behind them that was attracting his attention, and he was eager to uncover it despite the uncertainty and risk. He assumed the girl had left a gap on purpose. It was part of the mystery she had deliberately created to get his attention and pique his curiosity. This was the moment. He saw the cat in front of him. The animal sat calmly, emitting mysterious looks, as if inviting him to explore the mysteries hidden in its eyes. But still the hero was able to see something. Vague outlines flickered in his eyes like ghosts, hinting at hidden secrets that only he could unravel. Still, one could see part of the girl's green body. This unexpected accent in the setting adding to the mystery of her appearance, making him wonder about the possible secrets she might have been charged with. At this time she was choosing which clothes to wear. Her decision might have given a clue as to her intentions, but it also remained a mystery to him, adding excitement to the already tense atmosphere. The protagonist was immediately shy, for he didn't know what to do. The encounter with the unexpected sight of her green body and the confusion before her choice of clothing left him in a state of uncertainty. The cat at this time was smiling evasively at the guy, as if he knew something the others didn't, and his smile added mystery to an already confusing situation. He showed the animal that he was doing well here, for he was covering for his mistress. His gesture was an attempt to make contact with the cat, but there was irony in his smile, as if he suspected that the cat knew more than he was showing. Then he had already waited for the girl to finish, her choice of clothing finalized, and he felt relieved, hoping to continue their meeting and be able to understand her mystique. Xiaofei finished and walked out to the boy, determination in her gaze, and he realized that it was time for a serious conversation that might solve the riddles that had plagued him for hours. She said she was done and was fine. Her words sounded calm, but an unfathomable mystery flashed in her eyes, compelling him to keep searching for answers to unsolved riddles. The protagonist said he was fine too. His words were calm, but inside he felt a mixture of curiosity and anxiety, for the encounter with the mysterious girl and her mysterious cat continued in front of him. She is happy and started hugging him very tightly. Her emotions seemed sincere, but at the same time he felt that there was some deep secret hidden in her embrace that she was not ready to reveal yet. She doesn't know why, but when she sees him she is very happy, and her tight embrace expresses this feeling. However, there is a mysterious secret in their relationship that they have not yet revealed. But if she can't be clingy, why does she need a boyfriend? This question pierced the air, filling the space with unresolved doubts and riddles, leaving the hero in a state of uncertainty. He'd had enough adventures for today. It was time for him to get back to the shitty Edu. But the girl had offered to spend the night at her place tonight, causing him mixed feelings of joy and anxiety at the possibility of new mysteries. He wondered where he would sleep then. The question surfaced in his thoughts, causing a little anxiety, but at the same time adding mystery to the night ahead. When she told him, and he found out he was going to sleep with her, he became even more embarrassed, all flushed with awkwardness and mixed feelings. But her little brother is sleeping with her, and he figured she didn't think they could do that. This moment added new complexities to an already confusing situation, leaving him in a state of bewilderment and uncertainty. The protagonist was immediately disappointed afterward. This unexpected turn of events shattered his confidence and left him with a bitter sense of disappointment. But if she's so reluctant to break up, why don't they go to her parents' garden plot? Maybe help them out a little. But the protagonist felt disappointment engulf him, eroding the last threads of hope. He thinks he can meet that sobbing kid on his bike again, so why not brave his little three-wheeler today? The thought revitalized his soul and gave him hope for new encounters and adventures. adventures, but the girl said it was his father's car, not the boyfriend's, a statement that shattered his dreams and left him with a sense of loss and disappointment. The main character did not care about this, and he was ready to go, because in his heart burned the desire to spend time together with the girl. Despite the origin of the motorcycle, Lin asked the girl if she was ready for such a trip. His gaze was full of hope while the girl smiled and agreed, sharing his excitement and determination. She only wondered if he knew how to ride it himself. The question came out of curiosity, but there was also respect for his experience in her gaze. Also, she couldn't understand why she was suddenly scared. This feeling filled her heart with anxiety and indecision, causing her to be inwardly anxious. He'd never eaten pork, but he'd seen them running around, so all wispy. It led to a strange feeling, a mixture of curiosity and some awkwardness, and then they did collapse, so that the girl almost fell. The unexpected turn of events caused a bit of a shock, but they managed to hold on and continue on their way. Our heroine finally came to her senses, and I realized that although her boyfriend doesn't give her a sense of security, he remains an unpredictable person at heart who messes with her nerves, but she'll get used to it. Wook was informed that they had learned their identities. This news brought a note of unease to their plans, forcing them to rethink their strategy and be more cautious. Her name is Chen Zifei, 22 years old. She is a nurse in a hospital in the city center. Farming, simple social relations. Her family only has a mother, father and brother. The offender is a man named Lin Tian, 25 years old, unemployed, socially inept, recently diagnosed with terminal stage cancer. The surveillance camera had him entering the house heading straight for the young owner's room, then jumping out the window and disappearing without leaving a trace. The old man didn't even know what to answer at this moment. His mind was gripped by a mixture of surprise, anxiety and bewilderment, and he couldn't find the words to express his thoughts. Sung Ho, upon learning of the guy's illness, suddenly felt a strange mixture of compassion and amazement, for he had never realized that this guy, with whom they usually had fun together, turned out to be a cancer patient. The girl seemed to recognize the name. It was familiar to her, and some mysterious understanding flashed in her eyes, as if she had discovered a thread linking past and present. The woman restrainedly didn't let anger overpower her, realizing that they were just a lowly couple not worth their anger, nor did she even show any desire to hear an apology from them. The old man was interested in what Sung Ho's opinion on the matter was, and he expected to hear something reasonable and thoughtful from him. He's amazed that a man terminally ill with cancer was able to fight off several bodyguards, barge in here and get away unharmed. And he's filled with fear that there might be more to this guy than what's just written on paper. He thinks it's best to calm down, make further inquiries against the family and not offend them. After that, he turned to Li Mu. He wanted to get her point of view. It was important to hear another person's opinion to see how they could evaluate this whole situation. She pondered. Since her uncle had no relations with women, hence would leave no biological evidence, she was sure he was no threat to her. Their appearance was just noise, so they shouldn't apologize or appease him. But if they did something wrong, this guy, obviously defiant and possibly with mental problems, might even attack them. So she decided it was best to just do nothing and let him calm down a bit. The old man laughed and remarked that his son was now not as smart as his daughter. He added that if it wasn't for the fact that she was a girl, she would be the perfect heir. The woman was puzzled. Are they really not going to do anything about this situation? Are they really not going to take some action? The old man suggested she forget what had happened, warning her that she could go to jail for her actions, and wondered how many other stupid things he had done behind the scenes. Let them send this vile fellow to Africa, where the vast prairies and dense jungles will witness his banishment from the civilized world. This guy, Ling Tian, only had a few minutes from the time he arrived to the time he left, so he had no time to make videos or gather evidence that could threaten his family. But despite that, how he had the courage to tell his family to apologize remains a mystery. At this time the gentleman was busy with breaking news from the hospital, where something important or unexpected was happening that caused him to interrupt his usual business and pay attention to this. The mother wondered what was wrong with her boy as he seemed tense and silent, and she couldn't help but notice that something was bothering him that made her anxious and eager to find out what was going on. Dong-wook was also strange to decide, but he decided to listen carefully to what they would be told because he could see some worry in his eyes and felt that the situation needed attention. The hospital found a metal object in the young master's brain, intertwined with the nearby nerves and blood vessels. It cannot be safely removed with current medical technology, but if the object is not removed within 12 hours it could cause permanent nerve damage. Even if the young gentleman survives, the consequences could be severe. He may be disabled or an envious idiot. All of this happened at the moment when a man shot the protagonist, piercing his body with a bullet that ripped the air with its whistle, making everyone around him freeze in horror. And time froze in that moment, and the bullet pierced his head like lightning in the black night, destroying everything in its path and causing the world around him to stand still in momentary silence. Shrouded in fear and terror, but he removed the bullet from his head, determined to use it further as a symbol of his indomitable strength and unwavering determination despite the cruelties and threats that lay in his path. And despite the danger, he made the decision to use it next, heading straight for the young lord's head as if to symbolize his fearlessness and determination to see his goals through. It turned out to be the protagonist's plan that really worked, and his courage and determination to bring victory was not only confirmed, but was the key to success in this dangerous situation. The mother, having experienced horror, did not know what to do, for the situation was extremely tense, and she found herself defenseless before the unpredictable events that were unfolding before her eyes. Sung-ho could not understand how this was possible, for his brother clearly had no head wound, and he could not understand how the bullet had gotten there, for it seemed an absurd and inexplicable mystery. It looked like someone had done it on purpose for them to come and apologize, and this caused fear in Son of Hook's heart, for this time, he was expecting to meet someone special who could have an important meaning in their lives or their family's destiny. Let Sung-ho go and meet with this man, ask him what he wants, and try to fulfill his wish, for time is running out, and if something happens, there will be no one left to take the reins of the family. The father was approached by his daughter to help him, because at such times family unity proves essential. Their strength and support for each other can be a decisive factor in difficult situations. She decided to go with him to meet this Ling Tian, realizing that her presence might prove useful and help ease tensions or resolve any conflict that might arise. Have someone go and find out the protagonist's current location as soon as possible, because his safety and future actions may depend on this information, and the sooner this is done, the better. The girls wondered if the guy could be the very person who could solve the situation, and their curiosity prevented them from remaining indifferent, for much in their future could depend on it. As the girl and the guy were driving, they hummed a very cheerful song that filled the air with joy and laughter, creating a pleasant atmosphere and uplifting their journey. Both of them were in a very good mood indeed, their hearts filled with joy and cheerfulness, creating a sincere atmosphere of happiness and well-being that warmed them in this beautiful moment together. That's when some men appeared on the road and frightened the heroes very much, disturbing their harmony and serenity suddenly. The men started yelling, demanding that they get off the road on their stupid motorcycle. His angry words cut through the air and disrupted the peaceful atmosphere, making the heroes feel scared and uncomfortable. The protagonist replied that he didn't hear him and ordered him to speak louder, emphasizing his determination and steadfastness in the face of the onslaught of aggression. The man was furious, for he had ordered the hero out of the way, and his anger poured out in fury, enveloping the situation in an atmosphere of tension and menace. Lin once again demanded that the men speak louder, pointing out that he couldn't be heard and how he could even be heard if he spoke so quietly, emphasizing his determination and persistence in this conflict. The man's rage knew no limit, his anger transforming into a frenzy, filling the air with tension and menace, creating a dangerous environment for the heroes. He instantly started swearing at the guy, because he was very angry. His speech was full of swearing and hatred, which only increased the tension and aggression around him. The protagonist promised that with such a bad attitude, he would never pass him by, as if expressing his determination and courage to stand his ground in this conflict. The girl knows that he is very powerful, but she is just afraid that his anger might spill over to the others in the village, and because of this, she doesn't want to further inflame the situation in an effort to keep the peace and tranquility of the surroundings. Still, it turned out to be a game, and the protagonist let the man pass, deciding it wasn't worth letting the conflict fester within himself, preferring to keep the peace and calm in this tense situation. As the men drove by, he showed his middle finger to the protagonist, expressing his resentment and disdain, which only added tension to their relationship and intensified the conflict. Of course, he immediately erupted in rage, intending to retaliate for such an insult, threatening to pull that finger out of the man's ass and make him regret his words through agony and pain. The boy noticed that the man was protective of his home village and realized that this was important, even if it was not always possible to maintain good relations and avoid conflict. The girl asked to be understood in the right way, showing compassion and understanding despite the difficult circumstances and possible misunderstandings. He stopped and said he was not angry with the girl at all, showing understanding and willingness to dialogue in order to resolve the conflict and maintain a peaceful relationship. This man had just been a subordinate of the local village tyrant who had bought the planting area for a good price and then started renting it out to farmers in neighboring villages, including the girl's parents, at high prices. Lately the rent increase had made it unpleasant, and the father's beating was probably related to that. The protagonist understood and said that he would then have to buy the land, expressing his willingness to fight the village tyrant and protect the interests of his family and community. He doesn't have any money and he told me that he would be the one to buy it, but someone will definitely buy it for them, probably someone super rich, which adds unpredictability to the situation and creates new challenges for the main character. When the men arrived, he started telling no one to not get angry, because he had been held up on the road by some fucking asshole, showing his annoyance and anger at those who stood in his way. The men decided not to listen to him and asked him to start the car. They decided to show these women their place by showing their rudeness and intent to show their power over others. They decided to see how the villagers would talk now, as if anticipating the reactions of those around them to their actions and preparing themselves for the possible consequences of their behavior. All residents were willing to stand to the end despite any threats or dangers, showing their determination and unity in defense of their community and their rights. Some men asked them not to misunderstand him. He didn't want them dead. He explained that they couldn't pay their rent and it would starve his people. The contract stated that the rent was only 500 per acre, but they have changed the price to 3,000 per acre, which is causing considerable hardship to the residents, for they cannot afford the expense. The men said his signature is here and claimed that the contract clearly spells out the new price. Now they are making scandals and changing their words, which is causing irritation and resentment among the locals. He promised that they would level them with regular fields, the land, as if showing his willingness to compromise and his desire to find a solution that would satisfy both sides. The people were determined. They refused to leave and told him to just try to do it if he could, expressing their willingness to defend their interests and their land to the end. He goes too far. These vegetables of blood life, let him not lead people into sin, they warned, expressing their dismay at the man's actions and urging him to stop before he causes more harm and suffering. A few days ago he didn't beat to death because he was trying to be polite. How dare he create trouble today? Fine. Since they want to be in for rent, then let him give back the land, they pointed out, expressing their displeasure and demanding justice in the situation. Right at that moment, the men sprang into action, emphasizing his determination and intention to put his threats into action, causing tension and anxiety among those around him. The men was asked how he was and if he was okay, expressing their concern and interest in his condition in light of the events. There's nothing he wouldn't dare to do if he wanted to, and in 3 days the men will be dead, they said, realizing the gravity of the situation and worrying about the possible consequences. In any case, regardless of the circumstances, one must remain upright and fight for liberation from oppression, for there comes a point when life without joy becomes unbearable, and only truth can bring about change. We have one who intends to strike. Let him try to put his sinister intentions into action. Let him look into the eyes of danger and see if he dares to put his dark plans into action. If a man is so exhausted by life that he is willing to comply with a request presented to him, then he has reached a point where desperation exceeds his strength and he is ready to submit. The village people, united, sought to accomplish this task together, realizing that the strength and resources pooled together would enable them to achieve their goal. At the most unexpected moment, the guy discovered that a mysterious criminal and his girlfriend lived nearby, and realized that it was a vegetable plot belonging to the girl's parents. The girl instantly recognized her parents and farmers, and realized that there was an encounter with the village bandits. The guy decided to pause for a moment, rushing to a resting position, realizing that the girl had warned him of possible trouble if he did serious damage to one of the bandits. Xiaofei felt embarrassed, not understanding why the matter was not being resolved. After all, she had already apologized to him, admitting her mistake in the incident. But despite that, the situation remained unresolved. She decided to remain seated, not initiating a conversation with the guy, keeping the silence between them. The guy explained that his words were just a joke since his future father-in-law, and how could he not help it. He admitted that he just liked seeing her angry. He enjoys it all because of the fact that he enjoys not only the cuteness, but also the angry reactions of the girl, as they give him a special pleasure. The battle in full swing was in the air, filling it with energy and tension, passions burning brightly as the opponents fought with unrelenting determination. Not knowing who would leave the battlefield victorious, the woman offered to step back, questioning what they would do if the men died. Let them not worry. Even if they succeeded in defending this plot, they will not be able to sell a single additional product. Let all their efforts be lost and they will disappear into nothingness on this land. The men begged his daughter to marry her, promising to be her father and start a family where the rent would be tokenized to ensure they have a happy future together. The man was disgusted by low creatures like this man, causing him to feel nauseous and disgusted. Have him come back and tell her that if she stays with them for a month, they agree not to demand rent for that period. Suddenly the man noticed one of his guys being viciously attacked, and he quickly made the decision to intervene to protect his comrade from the attack. His adrenaline was up and he rushed into the fray, standing at his team's side. He was confused and could not understand who was responsible for the attack on his associate. He felt rage and a desire to find and punish whoever had committed such a treacherous act, but at that moment he noticed something strange above his head. A hovering object or shadow in the air caught his attention and caused him to feel a sense of disbelief and unease. He strained to gaze, trying to make out what it was. Suddenly a stranger entered his car, causing him shock and alarm. The men felt a surge of adrenaline and immediately took action to protect and secure his property. The men instantly recognized the protagonist, so vividly vividly and memorably distinguished from the rest that he could not be mistaken. Their meeting led to an exciting turn of events. The men realized that aside from his role as the protagonist, this character did not have an attractive appearance. However, this did not affect his importance and influence in the story's plot. The men promised that he would answer for the bludgeoning of their friend's face that was caused by him. He promised not to stand by in spite of dangers or difficulties and to take responsibility for protecting his friend. But today, as they listened, the situation immediately pressed down on them. They felt the weight of the circumstances heaped upon them, and felt that they were unable to cope with it at once. They literally had vegetables planted in this soil, putting their energy and hopes for a successful harvest into this endeavor. They paid special attention to this process, taking care of the growth and development of each plant. They didn't even die outright, as they usually do in comics, suddenly and without any warning. Instead, their story continued, filled with unexpected turns of events and unusual adventures. The protagonist stepped on the land, feeling its hard soil and hearing the noise of nature, did not die directly, and life went on. They planted vegetables, but the situation pressed on. The men promised to answer for slaughtering the face of a friend. The man was insanely grateful to the guy and asked where he came from, feeling a mixture of surprise and admiration at how the guy was there for him at the right moment, ready to help wholeheartedly and without further ado. When he saw his daughter, he assumed that it was she who had brought the lad, feeling joy and pride before her kind act, which he could not help but note and for which he was grateful to her. She admitted that Brother Lin had said he wanted to take a look at their order and that she had brought him here, adding that it was good that he had come with her, because these people were so bad. She needed support and safety. Everyone began to rejoice that the guy had saved them, feeling relieved and grateful for his good deed that brought them hope and rescue from an unfavorable situation. The man was angry that everyone was so cheerful, realizing that whoever the boy was, this could be the end of him, for suspicions and fears remained. The men said that a certain Yang Fu was furious, and he would definitely retaliate, filling the air with implacable tension and foreboding of future clashes. Despite the joy and relief all around, he said the protagonist would have to apologize to him. Maybe he wouldn't, but he was sure it would have to happen if he still had a healthy sense of judgment and everything necessary to do so. They all turned away in unison to look at them, causing a feeling of distaste and discontent to fill the air with awkward silence and tense anticipation. Lin couldn't understand what the hell he was carrying. It wasn't even like his usual cruel tone. Confusion and bewilderment prevented him from realizing what was going on, while Yang Fu's usual aggression was unexpectedly absent. Sung Ho said that coming on time is better than coming early, expressing the wisdom and importance of appropriateness and timeliness in a situation that requires tact and attention to detail. It was a really good performance, eliciting recognition and approval from all who witnessed the moment and highlighting the skill and talent of those involved. Those present could not understand how they had arrived so quickly, for they had not even noticed when they arrived, causing wonder and mystery around how they had gotten there so unnoticed. Everyone instantly turned around to see who it was, creating an instant scene of attention and curiosity, filling the air with anticipation and possible speculation. The men thanked the secretary for taking time out of his busy schedule to go with them, acknowledging and thanking him for his dedication and willingness to help despite his busyness. The men started yelling about the uncle's timing. No, they refused to pay. They didn't hit him after all. Let him look at him, expressing mixed feelings of relief and indignation, and demanding attention to the situation. But the men told him to shut up and be quiet, interrupting his stream of outrage and demanding attention to his own words. Now it was the girl and her father's turn to talk about why they had come, emphasizing the seriousness and importance of their presence and intentions to the audience. The secretary said it was all a misunderstanding. He would take care of it, and asked not to worry. Let him introduce some people he knew, expressing his determination to resolve the situation and offering his help. He introduced the father and the girl, informing her that they were not here to discuss business matters, so we could dispense with panic, creating an atmosphere of calm and confidence. Those in attendance realized that this was a large corporation that was constantly on TV. Realizing the scale and influence of the company that had caught their attention, the protagonist asked the girl not to worry, saying that they clearly didn't come here for him, emphasizing that their presence shouldn't cause her to worry. Well, even so, she had nothing to fear, for the guy was there to support and protect her, adding confidence and calmness to the situation. The parents were slightly surprised when the boy and girl held hands, causing the surprise and attention they expressed with looks and facial expressions. The secretary announced that it was time for him to return, concluding the meeting and reminding him of his duties that awaited him to continue his work and take care of current affairs. Li Mu asked which one was Mr. Ling Tian, expressing her curiosity and desire to determine the identity among those present. The protagonist replied to her that it was him, confirming his identity in front of Li Mu and the others present. The girl asked him to step back to her for a moment, implying that she had an important business or personal message she wanted to convey to him in private. Xiaofei asked him, even begged him not to leave, expressing her insistence and desire to keep his presence or attention in this situation. The guy said it was uncomfortable and suggested that she say everything here without making him uncomfortable. He added that if she was trying to take him out into the void, it wouldn't go away. He was worried that they might harm him after he himself had beaten all of their bodyguards. Realizing the possible consequences of his actions and the danger of retaliation, the men said that the guy was right and there are some things that do not need to be hidden but better to speak frankly. His brother group heard him and now he is in the hospital, not representing Lee's family, so he did not solemnly apologize, expressing his sincerity and willingness to reconcile. Recognizing the importance of open discussion of problems and solutions, the people present couldn't understand what was going on here, as it was unexpected to see such a big shot apologize to Xiaoling and Xiaofei, causing them to be bewildered and surprised. Suddenly there was complete silence, filling the space with an invisible tension and anticipation, as if all present were holding their breath in anticipation of the next turn of events. The silence became like an eternity, as if time had stopped. Only the heartbeat reminded of life. It enveloped the world, muffling the sounds and obscuring the noises, creating a sense of stillness and eternal emptiness. They pleaded for help, the fate of their brother, the only young male in the family. If something happened to him, no one would be able to take charge of the family. The girl, turning to her boyfriend, clarified whether he had done something to the men, although joking about the murder, emphasized that there was no need to resort to such extreme measures, implying that everyone understood. He would not exaggerate and make a big deal out of it. But he has no time today as local hooligans continue to bully farmers who persistently grow vegetables every day with contractual obligations. The girl politely requested permission to continue the conversation. She plans to purchase the land on behalf of her company and lease it to farmers growing vegetables at an affordable price. They will then be included in a ranking group of vegetable suppliers, guaranteeing high prices for produce and protection from bandits. The farmers were amazed at the girl's willingness to support their cause. Their faces expressed amazement and gratitude. They had not expected such willingness and help from anyone in their situation, but it gave them hope and new energy to fight for their interests. The men were also not left out and were deeply surprised. Their facial expressions were full of amazement and bewilderment, for such unexpected support came from the girl, and they were pleasantly amazed at the gesture. In addition, they promised to send Mrs. Chen's brother to the best aristocratic school in the city while she finished university. This card gives him the opportunity to enjoy 10% off all merchandise from Lee's. The girl was really very much surprised by everything that was happening around her, by sudden turns of events, unexpected discoveries and strange coincidences that seemed incredible and mysterious, as if the whole world was playing one big riddle with her. But not a woe without good, though the girl would have had to work for decades to pay for it all. It seems that the compensation was inadequate, leaving her with the feeling that something was missed or under-earned, as if some of her labor and effort went unrewarded. But he's just kidding, she thought, because if they came to apologize in good faith, they didn't give him compensation, and she would certainly forgive them for that, because sincere intentions were more important than material compensation. The protagonist promised to return, assuring her that he would definitely come back, as she would be waiting for him eagerly and believing that their meeting would be inevitable and unrepeatable. Xiaofei insisted that the boy return as soon as possible, emphasizing the importance of returning as soon as possible and the opportunities that awaited him upon his return. Let them take him back home. He doesn't want to go back to the hospital because he's afraid he's being used by everyone there on purpose and he needs to be free and independent. The girl asked to call again to make sure everything she said would be done. She needed confirmation and reassurance that her requests would be honored. The protagonist, looking at the man, realized that he looked much more good-natured compared to his own brother, whose face was often restrained by scowl and cruelty, as if the imprint of a dark character. In fact, he's recently been made aware of who he's actually managing behind the scenes, and it's made him truly regret the girls who have fallen victim to the dark activities he's been involved in. The daughter told the father she'd like to talk privately with the guy. After that, everyone got out of the car in silence, and without uttering a word, they drove away, leaving behind them the silence and mystery that enveloped each of them at that moment. Everyone was still left puzzled, trying to figure out what was going on here, and finding no answers. They turned to the girl in search of an explanation that might clear things up for them, but the girl herself appeared confused as well, her eyes expressing a mixed sense of surprise and bewilderment, as if she was also confused by everything going on around her. When the protagonist rode in the car, he couldn't help but notice how luxurious it was. The soft leather of the seats, the shiny paintwork and the superb execution of every detail created an atmosphere of sophistication and comfort. He thought of taking selfies in this luxury car and sending it to his friends, to share his delight and impressions of such an unusual and luxurious experience. The girl at that moment turned to him with a question that ruined his designs on selfies, and he turned to her, ready to hear her out. She asked if he remembered her, and there was a mixture of hope and uncertainty in her voice, as if she waited anxiously and impatiently for his answer. She calmly remarked that it was okay if he didn't remember her, but still she wanted to ask him for a personal favor. She needed his abilities. There was confidence in her voice as if she knew he couldn't refuse her. The girl genuinely wanted it more than anything. Her eyes testified to a deep desire and persistence that was reflected in her words and gestures. The protagonist felt a vague sense of bewilderment, not quite knowing what she was talking about, and his face expressed a mixture of surprise and bewilderment as he tried to make sense of her request. The protagonist felt a vague sense of bewilderment, not understanding what powers the girl was talking about, and remembering the X-Men stories, he realized that he didn't have any supernatural abilities. Then how does he explain his sudden recovery from an incurable disease after he rescued an academic and survived a bullet to his uncle's head? If his abilities are not as ordinary as she suggests, let her step up and take him if it is a crime. But how will he explain his sudden recovery from an incurable disease and other strange events? The girl suddenly approached the boy, and in her eyes flickered a strange excitement and genuine interest, as if she possessed some secret knowledge or intention. She felt joy at his confession because she had been waiting for this moment, and now that he had opened up she was ready for the next step. She needed him to do something for her. At this time, the protagonist had already arrived at the mansion, and his mind was filled with questions and doubts about everything that had happened today as he paced the dark corridors surrounded by silent mystery. The man in that moment was in unbearable physical pain that seemed to tear him apart, causing him to suffer agonizingly as he tried to deal with the aftermath of the day's events. Lin, despite everything, placed her hand on the man's head, trying to ease his pain and give him some support and comfort in this difficult moment. There was dead silence, for all present were expecting some miracle, and in this moment the tension was so palpable that one could feel the air filled with expectation and hope for a miracle. The silence continued for a while afterward, as if time stood still in anticipation of something important or decisive, and in that moment the whole world seemed frozen, as if ready for a miracle or something. Lin dared to look around and glance at everyone, wanting to catch any sign of their emotions and feelings in this moment of tension and anticipation. The father and daughter continued to stand and watch intently. When her father was young, he suddenly fell ill with a strange disease, his body weakening day by day, and the cough that appeared was replaced by heavy breathing with even small efforts. Despite many examinations, the cause of such a condition could never be identified. He realized that she wanted him to cure her father so he could continue to fight for power. Unfortunately, he wasn't interested in meddling in the internal affairs of their family, leaving it outside of his interests. She had a fear that her father might not be remorseful when he woke up and possibly continue to harm innocent women. But if he didn't want to help, she accepted it and realized there was nothing she could do to help these innocent victims. He realized why everyone was so fond of pretending and pushing pity. He wondered if he should cure his father, realizing that even if he did, he would probably still continue to do evil, and came to the conclusion that he was a moral freak. The protagonist determinedly took the bullet out of the man's head, feeling horror and disgust mingle in his heart at the sight of this brutal act, and realizing that this action could not be justified to himself or others. And then he announced that everything was ready. His voice sounded firm and confident despite the gravity of the situation, and everyone around him instantly turned their gaze attentively to him. He thought he could smell the odor of intruder and tranquility, and it gave him a thrill of anxiety, as if something sinister and incomprehensible were creeping up on them, preparing to strike. Then he grabbed the man sharply by the throat and began to choke him, his hands shaking with rage and fear, and a fierce determination flickering in his eyes that left no chance of forgiveness. The mother couldn't understand what he was doing to her son, and her voice sounded frightened and shrill as she shouted his name, but he paid no attention to it, deepened in his actions. The girl and her father also began to worry, their faces expressing anxiety and concern as they watched, unsure of how they should react to this sudden and horrible situation. The guards immediately ordered him to let the men go, and their voice sounded harsh and stern, reflecting the gravity of the situation. But he showed no sign of complying with that order, maintaining his long, thrilling energy. If he didn't let the men go, the guy would strangle him mercilessly, preparing to carry out that threat, and there was a fierce determination in his eyes. The mother begged for her son to be released. The men asked if they had done anything wrong and offered to discuss things, his voice sounding soft and pleading, as if he was trying to find a way to resolve the conflict. In response, he showed them a bullet and held it out in front of them, showing his determination and the seriousness of the situation, and his actions filled the room with tension and menace. The protagonist then transformed his arm, preparing for possible action, and the tension in the room reached its peak. Everyone was scrutinizing his every move, ready for anything. Limu was curious about what he was up to, her eyes full of curiosity and anticipation as she watched him, trying to figure out his intentions. Dongwook told the guard to stand and do nothing. His voice sounded firm and adamant, and the guard silently complied with his order, remaining where he was, watching what was happening. Then the guy literally fired that bullet. His movement was quick and sudden, and the sound of the shot pierced the silence, filling the room with horror and shock. She woke up through a lot of people and gunfire, seeing the bullet fly past her and crash right into the wall. Her heart was pounding frantically and her eyes were wide with terror and shock. They couldn't figure out who it was that had walked in and assumed someone was following you. Huddled together, other, their voices sounding vague and tense. They felt threatened but couldn't pinpoint its source. There were many men there, and they did not share information about their discovery, keeping it secret, their faces expressing determination and tension, and their actions cautious and cautious. They decided to forget about it and immediately rushed into the room, their movements determined and aggressive, as if they were ready for any possible consequences. Everyone present was surprised, except for the protagonist. His expression remained unwavering, as if he had expected this turn of events, and his eyes silently observed what was happening. They killed the bodyguard instantly. Their movements were swift and ruthless, as if they were acting according to some hidden plan or purpose, and a tense silence hung in the room after this brutal act. They were happy that they were able to accomplish their tasks, and their faces lit up with satisfaction when they realized that everything had gone according to plan and their goals had been achieved. The girl suddenly realized that these were the clothes of her bodyguard and second uncle. Her face contorted in horror and terror as she realized what had happened and what it meant for her loved ones. And then someone came out to him, and their meeting was full of unpredictability and tension as they stood face to face, ready for further events. It was the same man the protagonist had fought, and he decided to watch as he would try to get out of here alive. Aggression and contempt flickering in his eyes as he looked at his opponent. The protagonist inwardly wondered how could such a large family not prepare an ambush to kill him, especially after he saved the life of one of them. Dongwook admitted that he didn't really know who had hired the men, and his face expressed genuine bewilderment and embarrassment as he made this admission. Abruptly her mother blurted out that it was her, and her words broke the silence, filling the room with shock and incomprehension, and all eyes turned to her in disbelief and surprise. This man had just bullied her, almost killing her son, and now he didn't want to let him go after all this. The mother's words were infused with painful anger and despair, her voice sounding full of rage and resentment for what was happening. She admitted her mistake and begged for her son to be released so that he could leave this place with the girl and leave the city, her voice sounding humble and pleading and her gaze filled with regret and remorse. The protagonist told the woman to watch her language. His words sounded stern and adamant, as if he was demanding respect for himself and the situation they were in. The main character suggested that the old man said something pointing out the possible consequences for the whole family should something happen to him. This remark was expressed with seriousness and inner anxious tension. The daughter then opined that her father might be able to recover, her voice sounding hopeful and optimistic, as if she was trying to maintain a more pessimistic atmosphere. The daughter expressed doubts, saying that despite going to several renowned doctors, her father showed no signs of improvement. With each passing year his condition only worsened and it seemed hopeless, her words reflecting worry and frustration. Above the girl said that this was not the case and that hope was still present. Her words were filled with optimism and faith in the best, and they brought slight relief in a difficult environment. She again appealed to the protagonist to make an effort to heal her father. She hoped that his abilities or decisive actions could lead to the recovery of her close relative. She not only asked but begged the protagonist to do so. Her pleas were sincere and desperate as her father's health and life depended on her healing. Lin didn't know what to answer, so he just remained silent as he continued to look at her. He felt confused and helpless in front of her pleading eyes, and his mind searched for an answer that could bring her hope and relief. The father was surprised that the girl was so persistent and desperate. He was overcome with a sense of wonder and some bewilderment at her persistence and willpower. He had not expected her to be so determined in her request. He was intrigued and surprised by the girl's persistence. He was curious and wanted to understand how the younger brother could cure Sungho's illness, causing him to have mixed feelings and questions. The old man ordered them to grant him whatever he wished, causing them embarrassment and excitement, for they wondered at his motives and possible consequences. However, the mother asked if this man was deceiving them. Since Sung-guk is the family's sole heir and their future, there was suspicion and caution before his demands and possible hidden intentions. They decided to get the guy to the right place. Even if he was feeling scared, they told him to think about his family and his girlfriend, letting her deal with her father and the situation in general on her own. She was willing to give up her precious ring to help in solving the problem. Her offer showed her willingness to sacrifice even her most precious object for the sake of her well-being in solving the problem, which caused others to marvel and admire her. This ring was given to her by her grandmother before her death and symbolized her legacy. She gave this ring to her boyfriend so that he could wear it for a year and be able to freely go in and out of any place under her control, giving him special protection and authority. She notices that he doesn't like to be motivated by money and realizes that he is more interested in what she has to offer in a unique and special way that doesn't involve material goods. The protagonist agreed to her proposal, but only under the condition of her sincerity and genuine intention to help. It was important to him that her motives were genuine and not related to selfish interests. The woman was loyal and turned to the men. Since they were professionals, she asked them to ambush and shoot the guy to get his attention and make him reconsider his actions. The men came up with the best idea given all the arguments and conflicts. Their suggestion was to eliminate all the key figures present today to take over as head of the family and become the most powerful. The woman couldn't couldn't understand what he was saying and assumed he was going to rebel against the existing order. Her uneasiness surfaced and she began asking questions to clarify his intentions and understand what the consequences might be. It turned out that they were just a group of criminals interested in the money who had gone undercover as bodyguards. The woman realized that anyone could have taken advantage of the situation and felt a growing unease. The old man was now asking for everyone to look at the woman and evaluate what she had done. He wanted to find out what consequences her interference had caused or see how she had handled the situation she had created. The men suggested placing everyone under house arrest, warning that they would be killed if they resisted, a suggestion that shocked and horrified those present, causing them to wonder about the seriousness of the situation and the possible consequences. The man was glad that the plan had begun to take effect. He felt relieved and hopeful that his proposal would be carried out and the initiation of action would lead to the desired results. The girl pleaded with the protagonist to protect them, pointing out that the ring would become useless if they were not safe. She expressed her hope for his protection and ability to keep them safe to preserve the value and power of the ring. He realized that he had planned to take this guy hostage and make a deal, but now he realized that it had become futile. Circumstances had changed or new factors had emerged that made his idea unrealistic or futile. How about we run Mr. Lee into these assholes and see if they can kill one of them? The men experienced mixed feelings, including excitement and surprise, at such a suggestion, but he could also feel anxiety and aversion to violence or illegal behavior. Just as the guy said, he actually literally threw the men among the criminals, fulfilling his threatening offer. The men still managed to strike one of the criminals without letting himself get caught and they didn't fly together. He used his strength and skills to handle the situation and defend himself. The blow was so strong that both criminals fell from the window. The man's powerful reaction caused the criminals to lose their balance and caused them to fall. It was an unexpected turn of events that affected the course of the situation. Happily, they didn't land directly in the bushes after falling out of the window, preventing additional injuries or threats. The protagonist joked about the men and thanked him for his help, perhaps in the form of an ironic note or humorous comment. The woman lay releasing foam and staring at the ceiling, apparently immersed in her thoughts or feelings. Her actions could indicate restlessness, absent-mindedness, or simply having free time to think. The men made the decision to open fire on the guy, showing aggression and intent to harm him with a firearm. This was not a problem for him. As to him, the bullet was just a tool he chose to use. However, it is important to remember that the lives and safety of others must be given due consideration and respect. Let them watch him violate the laws of the world. This expression reflects his defiance to the rules and his intention to actively violate established norms and laws. He began collecting all those bullets, perhaps with the intent of controlling them or preventing them from being used for potential harm. He harbored an interest in the idea of collecting all these bullets, perhaps based on his own motivations or plans he may have had for these bullets. The men could not understand how he was able to catch all the bullets with his bare hands, and believed that a monster or a creature with unusual abilities was in front of him. The man was on a normal field, as expected, and had not been killed as it had happened to him last time, so he would not allow such a thing to happen again. Despite the lack of a significant physical advantage, the man was brought an RPG, and he suggested that the guy try to devour a more serious weapon, perhaps in a joking or defiant manner, implying that it would be a difficult task or an impossible action to accomplish. He's going to blow the guy up just today. His determination is so fierce that the air is tense, eyes glittering with mad determination. Time is slowed, tension rising with every breath, mind sharpened for the grim mission. Every detail must be flawless for success. The protagonist, trapped and feeling fear and determination in equal measure, witnessed a sudden gunshot that shattered the silence. The bullet pierced the air, rapidly approaching him, then slammed into his body with force, leaving a merciless trail of death. The protagonist, of course, had his own plan regarding this event. He foresaw possible dangers and prepared for them, but an unexpected shot undermined his expectations, forcing him to reconsider his strategy and act on the fly. He instantly used the transformation to prevent damage in himself, shifting into a state that provided protection from immediate danger. Then a massive explosion erupted in the room, shaking everything around it and filling the space with smoke and fire, forcing the protagonist to react instantly to save himself and his targets from destruction. It didn't matter to the men that he had blown up the entire family, as Master Lee was still downstairs, not having made a colleague out of him, using him as his puppet to take over the property. The men then told them to stay here and clean up, emphasizing the need to maintain order, while he himself hurriedly headed back to the hospital. Sensing the growing anxiety and need for urgent help, as he was leaving, he suddenly felt something moving behind him, like an invisible gaze, and it made him look around carefully to make sure he wasn't alone in this tense moment. The bullet, whistling through the air, aimed inexorably and hit him right in his already wounded and broken leg, piercing the fabric and causing a momentary horrible painful shock that made him shrink in agony. He collapsed to the ground, tortured by the pain that pierced him even though they had just put a cast on his broken limb, as if every nerve in his body was crying out in agonizing rebellion. He was profoundly surprised that the guy didn't die, for the RPG shot had seemed seemed so devastating that he had prepared himself for the worst. But life was once again unexpectedly stubborn and unpredictable. The hand, which had once been gracefully curved in its form, now clumsily took on the contours of a pistol, like a sculpture of steel. Speaking of how cruelly war changes a man's appearance and disposition, it was truly amazing and incredible in the performance of the main character, as if he became the personification of overcoming all obstacles and circumstances, acting as a symbol of struggle and survival in the most extreme conditions. He also, at the very peak of things, suddenly gained a pair of wings to use as a shield, protecting the others from a possible explosion, their frail bodies struggling to stay in the air. But his determination was stronger than gravity. This guy turned out to be a real monster, in the best sense of the word, because his actions and decisions in moments of crisis were so impeccable and courageous that he seemed more than human. The man could not imagine that the main character really turned out to be invincible, because in front of his steadfastness and courage, even the most difficult trials and challenges seemed just a game on his way to victory. Lin was ready to proceed to the site where the attack had occurred, with a serious expression on his face, ready to uncover all the secrets and unravel the mysteries this dark event was hiding. The men were frightened to the very depths of their souls, certain that before them was not a monster, but a demon, for its wings, like the wings of the devil, seemed to them a symbol of evil and hell. Frightening with its mysterious origin and power, they decided it was better to jump out the window and try to escape, even if it meant possible death from the fall, than to be alone with this supposed demon, who they thought was just a vile creature ready to devour them alive. One of the men, frightened beyond belief, was indeed the first to jump decisively through the window, more willing to face possible death outside than to remain face to face with the terror he believed was right in front of him. The protagonist reassured the others by saying that the danger was over and offered them a free breath, hoping that he had not frightened them too much by his actions and that they would forgive him for having to take extreme measures in a crisis. Lumi gently asked his father to refrain from asking too many questions, implying that discussing this topic might be unnecessary or inappropriate at this moment. The guy politely asked to feel his pulse and ascertain the man's condition, showing concern and willingness to help in a time of need. He instantly took over the case, scrutinizing the situation and taking steps to make sense of what had happened. Showing determination and the ability to act in critical situations, the protagonist was determined to help this man, preparing to offer his support and resources to provide him with the help and support he needed in his time of need. Still, during this tense time, he sensed something unusual and mysterious that made him wonder. Frozen in place waiting to see what might happen next, a sudden realization came to him of something much deeper and more important than he could have expected, and his astonishment knew no bounds, revealing new horizons of understanding and possibility. The girl was curious about what was going on, and she asked if the guy had found any problem, expressing her interest and willingness to help. As it turned out, no, he just wanted to ask if it was possible for her to be reimbursed for the cost of those torn clothes. Expressing his concern and hoping for understanding and support, she has 49 companies under her management. He can take the ring, pick any one of them and take whatever he needs including food, clothing, housing and so on as it ends. Free food, drinks and lodging in exchange for treatment is a much more convenient option, providing not only necessary services, but also easing the financial burden during such a difficult time. He offered to return to the case, although he had in fact discovered something important, but hesitated whether to reveal it. Feeling inwardly hesitant and anxious about the implications of the discovery, the men had long since given up hope. However, if they could figure out the cause of the disease, even if it could not be cured, he would at least be able to die with a sense of peace knowing that an attempt had been made to understand and defeat the disease. But unfortunately, the men misread the situation. He tries to convey that the bond between him and his brother is probably not defined by kinship ties. This may entail a change in their relationship and perception of each other. The man was so surprised that his eyes widened to the utmost and his heart beat so hard that he could feel it thumping in his ears, as if his eardrums were filled with a surprise that made him quite doubt the reality of what was happening. Judging by the expression on the old man's face and his frozen stare, it could be concluded that he was not aware of what was happening. His facial expression betrayed complete incomprehension and disbelief, as if he had found himself in a situation he had never dreamed of knowing. Then the only logical explanation could be that someone in the family had tricked them both into some convoluted, intriguing plan that ended up leading everyone into wrong decisions and actions, leaving only room for doubt and disappointment. He doesn't know who his real father is, and let the others find out for themselves. Now he's going to show him something, preparing to reveal a secret or a fact that will change all perceptions of his past. The cause of her father's illness. selfless, which had been lurking in his body for years, turned out to be something she didn't even know about, leading to a long and exhausting battle with an unknown enemy threatening his health. He began to extract some vessels directly from the man's hand, looking at it with surprise and bewilderment, not understanding what was going on, but sensing that it was something important and necessary to unravel the mysterious situation. The man was deathly frightened by what the protagonist started to do. His eyes were filled with terror and his heart was beating so hard that it seemed it could jump out of his chest any moment. He could not understand what was happening and felt that his life was in danger. He really couldn't understand what was about to happen. His mind was gripped with panic and his heart was beating so hard it prevented him from thinking clearly. Every moment was filled with uncertainty and he felt like flesh on a meat grinder of the unknown. The girl, too, was frightened out of her wits, though eager to know who her father was. Her heart was beating so hard that it seemed as if it might leap out of her breast, and her eyes expressed utter bewilderment and anxiety at the unknown, which made her tormented with doubt and fear. Then the protagonist made up his mind and dumped the substance directly onto the floor, his gaze expressing determination and a growing sense of responsibility. He realized he was doing something risky but hoped for the best. As it turned out, it was also alive, because it made a sound. This unexpected fact made everyone around him freeze in amazement, and the protagonist felt an inner shudder at the realization that he had just thrown something that could be alive. The man couldn't understand what this thing was or why it was in his body. His mind was full of questions and his eyes expressed utter bewilderment at this mysterious find that had suddenly floated to the surface. The guy doesn't know what it is, but he's sure it's been lurking in his veins for years, sucking energy from his host day after day, making him weaker and weaker. He slyly dodged all the equipment so they couldn't find it. Even he had trouble catching it. Then the creature began to transform into something else. The boy watched its form change before his eyes, evoking mixed feelings of surprise, anxiety, and curiosity. It was really disgusting, and on top of that, it seemed to have consciousness. The guy felt stunned watching this strange transformation that gave him goosebumps and not understanding what was going on. The protagonist, full of determination and courage, decided to deal with it and attack the creature. He did not hesitate despite the danger, for he knew that this was the only way he could stop its activities and protect himself and his loved ones. To find out what was behind it all, the protagonist speculated that there might be a conspiracy against their family, but at least while that conspiracy failed, he realized that he needed to act quickly and decisively to protect his loved ones and solve the mystery of this strange occurrence. His job is done. Now he has to pay more attention to the rest. Proper nutrition will help restore her father's body to health. It's time to take care of him and the rest of the family. When the girl asked him to wait a minute, he thought she meant to ask him to stay for dinner. A note of hope and possible happiness stirred in his heart. They were indebted to him for more than one favor. She didn't know how to properly thank him. She offered him her office and contact information to come over when she was free because she wanted to talk to him about something important. He'd have a couple questions for her too. He didn't need her card because if he wanted to find her he could certainly do that. The main character was hungry after a long day and decided to come home to finally eat the delicious dinner he had been waiting for a long time. Thinking about what kind of dinner he wanted to make and how to enjoy this nice moment of relaxation after a hard day's work. And then, as if at the speed of light, he literally flew away from them, disappearing from sight amidst the darkness of the night, leaving behind him only a shadow and the slight echo of his footsteps in the void. My father's body was finally well after many efforts and many weeks of treatment, bringing relief to the whole family who were relieved to be free from the stress and worry about his health. He just could not understand one thing: who and why wanted to hurt him. Dealing with the unraveling of the mysterious and incomprehensible events that had led him to this unbelievable question about the causes of the situation, the old man felt that such behavior was outrageous, reflecting a lack of respect and moral values that left him deeply perplexed and disillusioned with modern morals. Have them send someone to thoroughly investigate the matter, and his two sons agreed to accompany him for a paternity test if they found out they had been duped. He decided to kick her out of the house, determined to permanently sever all relations. Somewhere deep in the mountains, among majestic peaks and rushing streams, there is a hidden world of unshakable nature, where time flows slowly and wisdom comes from thunder and whispering wind, surrounding everything around with a mysterious atmosphere of mystery and eternity. Some magician sat behind the word, immersed in his magical rituals and arcane workings, invoking ancient spells and studying the star paths, while the world around him came alive with the sounds and mysterious energies he summoned. He picked up some worms with his wands, engaging in a strange study or ritual, delving into a world of arcane symbols and ancient knowledge that went deep into time and space. And then the goose was ready to throw them into the pot to cook something special, creating an atmosphere of excitement and anticipation around his culinary creation that heralded something unusual and delicious. A human corpse was found inside this pot, causing shock and horror to those who came across this gruesome find, and making them wonder how this could have happened and what will happen next. And then an explosion occurred on the grounds of this house, rumbling trembling and shaking the neighborhood, causing panic and chaos among those nearby, creating a whirlwind of events and mysteries in this mysterious place. Some creature appeared in front of him and asked if the Taoist magician would like to meet him, causing him to be surprised and interested in this sudden encounter with an unknown being. Someone at the foot of the mountain discovered a corpse that had been abandoned by Lee Sung-ho, causing excitement and outrage among those who encountered the gruesome sight and raising questions about the causes and consequences of the act. The creature could not understand how it was possible to destroy a man with artificial parasitic magic and the ability to control souls who was even more unpredictable. The mage confirmed that all was correct, leaving only mystery left to be solved by those who stood before him, holding their breath waiting for events to unfold. If there is another soul wielder capable of destroying this magic, it shows the strength of his skills and abilities, posing a serious threat to a mage with artificial parasitic magic. The creature offered to recruit this man, as after years without new accessions they could finally strengthen their team and increase their forces. He had lost his home in the whale of a universe for tens of millions of years, and so the opportunity to be on Earth was rare and precious, stirring his soul with a new beginning. Theoretically, he came here many years ago with the goal of finding and gathering as many soul people as possible to strengthen his ranks and increase his power. A very large and powerful monster appeared behind the man, causing him to feel a sudden sense of terror and tension, unexpectedly encountering such a threatening creature. But this man they were to kill, engaging in mortal combat with him to settle their differences or eliminate the threat he posed. The creature asked why the man wanted to kill him, seeking to understand his motives and reasons for his hostile attitude, perhaps hoping to resolve the conflict or find a compromise. In fact, the second wife of the Lee family gave birth to Lee Sung-guk by this very man. Even the creature was surprised as it happened, perhaps finding itself shocked by the unexpected revelation about Lee Sung-guk's origin. Years ago he was an attractive middle-aged lecherous man. They met at a bar where she was dancing and fell for each other immediately. The next day she discovered she was pregnant. It was unexpected but they accepted it with joy and hope for a future full of love and marital happiness. He knew he couldn't have a family because of his responsibilities, so he came up with a way to provide her and his son with protection. He purposely placed a yen worm inside his son to harness his energy, incapacitating him and shortening his lifespan. He feels guilty for not taking care of her all these years. Now that his destroyed plan is falling apart, his son is in serious trouble, and he realizes his responsibility for what is happening. The old man was insane and undividedly certain of his murderous intentions. He considered himself worthy to be the king of the scum, ready to assume the role without hesitation. Since he became obsessed with murder and robbery he was almost caught. Then a man rescued him and gave him shelter, for which the old man is grateful. However, in 3 days he intends to visit the man and destroy him. The protagonist returned to Xiaofei's family after years of absence. The reunion was long awaited and especially meaningful after all the trials of the journey. The house shone with comfort, and family dinners filled him with joy. He said he had come to dine with those who were closest to him, to share the joy of meeting and the comfort of a family meal together. Reunited after a long time of separation and adventures away from home, he walks freely and feels at home in this place, as if time has not changed his connection to his surroundings, where every corner reminds him of moments and memories dear to his heart. The father heard what had happened to the girl and realized he could not remain indebted to her, for his family owed them much. He lacked the words to express his sincere gratitude and appreciation for all they had done. Guy really appreciates his father's care, but he has to leave in the morning and probably won't be able to visit them for a few days. He feels mixed feelings about this but hopes he can be near his family again soon. Xiaofei was curious about what had happened and she waited anxiously to find out the details of the story, her interest driven by mixed feelings of anticipation and hope that everything would turn out well. But it was no big deal. He was just having a little trouble. Xiaofei was calm and confident that everything would work out and was willing to help if needed. As night fell, the protagonist headed to the bathroom to take a shower, finding a moment of peace and quiet after a long day where he could refresh himself and immerse himself in reflection before going to sleep. He was surprised to find that it was the girl's father's clothes. Luckily they were a larger size, but the color made him a little wary. However, he didn't pay much attention to it and continued with his business. He is really uncomfortable in these clothes as they are too tight. He walked into the room where the girl's younger brother was sleeping, feeling mixed feelings over the awkwardness and discomfort over the inappropriate clothes he was wearing, and tried to move carefully so as not to wake the boy. And then he lay down next to him altogether, feeling embarrassed by the awkward situation, but trying to be gentle and not disturb the peace of the girl's younger brother. At night, something disturbed the protagonist. He felt an incomprehensible anxiety that prevented him from sleeping peacefully and thinking about what was happening around him. He decided to get out of bed and take a walk to calm his thoughts and unload his mind from the troubling musings that were keeping him awake. He slowly walked out onto the balcony and found the girl standing there, braiding thoughts of the unexpected encounter and what he should say or do at that moment. He turned to the girl, for he wanted to know what she was doing here, feeling mixed feelings of curiosity and some awkwardness at this unexpected encounter on the balcony. Xiaofei asked him how he knew she was right here, expressing his surprise and desire to understand what brought the protagonist to the balcony at this time. When he heard the noise, he thought a burglar was getting into their house, but when he came out, it turned out to be the girl, which gave him mixed feelings of amazement and relief. She couldn't sleep because she was worried about her boyfriend, so she decided to go out on the balcony to meet him and talk about her feelings and worries. She thought it was all her fault, that she had gotten him into a lot of trouble, but if it wasn't for him she might be dead by now, and that thought kept her awake, preventing her from sleeping. The protagonist said that it wasn't her fault, and that sometimes there are times when the way forward is blocked, independent of her decisions or actions in the past. Whoever built it doesn't become it internally, and the protagonist offered to temporarily break up to make sure it wouldn't affect her. Realizing that true internal change takes time, he realized the need to finish his business quickly so that she would begin to miss him and look forward to his return. For the absence of his presence made her feel nostalgic and homesick. The next day, the construction of a luxury apartment building was completed. This building is designed for high-end people to live in and features luxurious amenities, high security and modern design. Limu opened her eyes early in the morning, waking up to the fresh air and the first rays of the rising sun. She felt a burst of energy and inspiration, ready to face the new day with optimism and determination. The morning began without any harbinger of trouble, and she woke up just as usual, full of hope and optimism, ready to face the new day with enthusiasm and joy. She fell into a deep sleep and finally woke up, feeling fully rested and realizing that a new day was beginning before her, filled with opportunity and adventure. Here, at this moment, as she looked around her room, she noticed something unusual and attractive, which brought her to a state of pleasant amazement. As it turned out, when she entered the front room, she found that there was a protagonist whose presence created a special atmosphere of mystery and intrigue. He politely approached her, smiled and said words of welcome, wishing her a joyous and bright morning, which sounded like real music to her ears. However, when she questioned how he had gotten here, he replied that he had entered through the open window only half a second ago, turning in the air like a light feather and landing here with the intention of pleasantly surprising her. She did not mean him personally, however, but questioned how he had suddenly found himself in her room, and who had allowed him to enter, for she was sure the door was locked and the window closed. He remembered that she herself had told him that as long as he wore the ring, he could move freely anywhere and no one would dare to stop him, for it gave him invulnerability and power that even he himself had not yet fully realized. Yes, of course it was right of him to warn her in advance, especially if she might find herself naked at that moment, to avoid awkward situations and respect her privacy. Given such haste, it is likely that he must indeed have some important reason for his sudden visit. Perhaps he is bringing with him important information or news that needs to be relayed immediately and that could affect them both. Have him first ask her to clarify who her real parent is. After all, they both knew about the ongoing investigation, and that may be the key to unraveling the mystery that has been lurking in their lives. It turns out that Lee Sung-guk's mother ran away last night, so the investigation that was going on no longer made sense and became useless since the main subject had disappeared. Then it is logical to assume that her father became the heir, because usually the change of heirs in such a large family could not pass unnoticed and had to appear in the news, causing widespread public interest. The girl asked the guy if he wanted his address and details to be shown on TV, in the hope that someone might be able to find him and help him with some important matter. There is a man who sowed the family seeds of evil by infecting the eldest son of the family with parasites over 20 years ago and then gifted an heir to continue his evil game with this family. Whether he raised his son personally or not, he is still the father binding their family to this cruel plan. Instead of waiting for them to look for information on him, you could use her family's influence, even if it would involve some monetary cost. Yes, it seems that his family has caused him more problems than good. In such a situation, using her family's influence can help him deal with the obstacles that arise and protect his interests. Now that he is caught up in this whole situation, all he has to do is meet this man in person. He realizes that he has found a good family and he doesn't want to be a gutless hero who couldn't protect anyone. He wants to be there for them and give everything of himself to help and protect his family. This sounds like a sensible plan. If her father can't recover quickly, then her grandfather takes on the responsibility of running the family business until her father can get back into business. This way she can focus on supporting her father and helping him during his recovery. This shows her dedication to the family and her desire to be there for him in times of need. Instead of waiting a long time, it may be wise to suggest that she go out and find a professional trainer or physical rehabilitation specialist to help her father recover as soon as possible. Li Mu told her parents that they had guests. The man was interested in what the main character was doing here. He was curious and wanted to know what actions or events brought this character to this place or situation. Li Mu said that the guy was was right and that it was indeed her mother, which could mean that she recognized that the guy correctly guessed her mother's identity, which could have important implications for the development of the plot or the relationship between the characters. Despite the difference in appearance, Lee Moo is certain that she is the daughter of her fat mom and skinny dad, and finds their combination amusing. He apologizes and offers his way of compensation, to perform weight loss surgery for her for free. In this way he hopes to make amends and help her achieve the results she wants in her struggle with excess weight. The mother felt the anticipation of something extraordinary. She was expecting an important event, a pleasant surprise or exciting news that could change her life or bring joy. She was just curious about what the guy was going to do. She was curious and wanted to know about his plans, actions and intentions. She expected some actions and decisions from him that could affect their overall situation. He asked the woman to be patient for a while. This could mean that he is asking her to be patient and give him some time and opportunity to finish what he started and do something important. He activated his abilities and applied them to the current situation to achieve desired results or solve problems. He leaped into the air, and at that moment it was as if he was floating several meters upwards, making it seem as if he was temporarily breaking the laws of gravity with his ability or skill. Her body suddenly began to undergo changes in the dark at night, causing her to be perplexed and anxious. It is a phenomenon she cannot explain or understand, and it occurs specifically during the dark hours of the night. She has really started to lose weight, that she is losing weight and becoming physically slimmer or less full. This could be the result of her efforts in nutrition, physical activity or lifestyle changes. The daughter and father could not look in the same place because it was too bright. The light was so intense that it was impossible or uncomfortable to look in. This color was visible even outside at a distance of several kilometers. It was so bright and intense that it could be seen from afar and stood out among the surroundings. They were interested in what had happened to the woman. They felt curious and wanted to know about what had happened to her or possible events that may have affected her condition or situation. Their faces expressed deep amazement when they saw what was happening. Their astonishment was so strong that they could not hide their emotions and feelings. They were completely stunned by what they saw. The woman couldn't understand why this dress had suddenly become so big for her. She was confused and puzzled by the change in size, as it had fit her well before, but now it appeared too bulky. The man felt in love with her again, as if he were a young man. He renewed his feelings, feeling a strong affection and passion for her that may resemble the feelings they had experienced in their youth. But the protagonist has stated that men must now fall in line. He claims her attention and the opportunity to establish a romantic relationship, and other men must wait their turn. He contemplates infusing energy into himself to recover in just 1 second. He realizes that in order to do so he will have to overcome some obstacles and accomplish this task with his own strength. He recognizes the need to overcome adversity and achieve this goal. The man asked him to wait at least a couple minutes. He asked for a short delay, perhaps to finalize something important or deal with an urgent matter before continuing or responding to the request. Now the light from the apartment was even stronger than the light from the woman. It was so bright and intense that it surpassed the brightness and radiance coming from the woman herself. The partner informed the girl that she had brought her food, meaning that she brought food for the girl, perhaps to help her or give her a treat. On the look of the food, it was indeed very tasty. The visual presentation of the dish whetted the girl's appetite and promised enjoyment of the wonderful flavor. Xiaofei also said that it was very tasty. She expressed her enjoyment of the food and confirmed that she enjoyed the wonderful taste of the food offered. But the guy asked if the guy who was previously her lover. She replied in the affirmative, confirming that this was indeed the person she had had a romantic relationship with in the past. At that moment the Lee family was shown on the news. Pictures, videos were shown or their story was told. It could have been related to some significant event, achievement or news related to the Lee family. This morning the family unexpectedly held an emergency meeting in which they reappointed the eldest son as chairman of the board of directors and removed the second son from the family list. This decision was probably made after discussing and thinking about family affairs and leadership in the company or organization. He has just been cured by a certain doctor. What is even more amazing is that he has become incredibly strong. He has gained incredible physical power and strength enough to carry 300,000 horses. This is an impressive achievement and a testament to his amazing abilities after the cure. This doctor was indeed unusual and unfamiliar to this world, and never could anyone think that such a doctor lived in such a remote place. His origins and abilities were a mystery to others, and his living in a remote place presented a surprise to all who learned about him. This masked young man is reluctant to reveal his identity, perhaps because he likes to remain an enigma to others. He prefers to maintain his individuality and mystery, creating interest and intrigue around his personality. Xiaofei instantly felt ashamed of her boyfriend. Something had happened or been said that made her feel dissatisfied and negative towards his behavior or actions. A bike guy watching the news noticed that the main character was too pumped up. He had a suspicion that the hero might have mistaken an ordinary villain for his opponent. Because of his looks and physicality, the hero assumed he was dealing with an ordinary villain. So after all, he has an entire organization of villains behind him, and he realizes that something is bound to come out of this. Knowing that the organization can be be dangerous and has plans. When he realized that General Yang Jiang had come to deal with him, he realized that it could be bad if ordinary people who were innocently involved in the situation got caught up in this fight. In this case, when General Yang Jiang came to deal with them, the hero realized that innocent people who were involved in the situation might get hurt.